Chapter 337. In the depths of the land of the Blood Dragon, in the huge ancient array, there were more and more powerful human cultivators. Countless human experts who came to save goddess Yun Luo were dragged into the formation and tortured beyond recognition. They were barely hanging on to their last breath. No one knew if the Blood Tribe had deliberately spread the news or if the humans had heard about it. The powerful cultivators of the Great Xia Holy City already knew the approximate location of goddess Yun Luo. This caused more powerful human cultivators to fall into the trap of the Blood Tribe. However, the powerful human cultivators did not act alone. Instead, they gathered together and did not allow the powerful cultivators of the Blood Tribe to attack them one by one. Time passed day by day. Finally, thousands of powerful human cultivators arrived outside the ancient array. The Blood Tribe and the Demon Race. The powerful cultivators of the two races in the land of the Blood Dragon had been recalled. There were more than 30,000 of them. More importantly, there were more than 30 saints among them. These Blood Tribe and Demon Race surrounded the ancient array. It was undoubtedly impossible for the powerful human cultivators to rescue goddess Yun Luo. For a moment, the powerful cultivators of both sides were in a stalemate. A great battle was about to break out. The more serious situation was yet to come. This was because countless powerful cultivators of the Blood Tribe and Demon Race had already discovered that the powerful cultivators of the Blood Tribe and Demon Race were still rushing over from afar. They had blocked all their escape routes. It was almost impossible for them to leave safely, let alone rescue goddess Yun Luo. God Phoenix, what should we do? On the side of the Great Xia Sacred City, there were only slightly more than 10,000 monstrous experts. Besides Son of Heaven God Wind, a powerful cultivator with a long beard and white hair had a serious expression. He was a saint and the protector of Son of Heaven God Wind. His name was Shuelaifeng. The situation in front of him was already out of his control. Although he was a saint, his status was still lower than the Son of Heaven God Wind. The situation in front of us. We can only think of a way to retreat. Son of Heaven God Wind was no longer as confident as before. He looked nervous as he spoke. He was recording the situation in front of him with a diamond-shaped crystal in his hand. As long as he recorded the scene here, no one would blame him even if he returned to the Great Xia Holy City. This was because everything that happened in the land of the Blood Dragon was beyond his ability. Let's retreat. Otherwise, we won't have a chance. Goddess Mystic Moon spoke. She agreed to retreat. Then, the other human geniuses and saints nodded and agreed to retreat. This was because the Blood Race and the Demon Race were too powerful. Compared to the Blood Clan and the Demon Clan, the human experts were like an egg striking a rock. Moreover, they could see that there were countless human experts imprisoned in the ancient formation, but they did not kill them. This was undoubtedly a huge trap, deliberately waiting for the human experts to come. Whoosh 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 of the human experts who came here, which one of them wasn't a heaven-defying genius. When he retreated, he did not hesitate at all. His figure flashed as he flew at high speed. Boom! However, just as the human experts flew up, the world changed. A blood-red light that was hundreds of miles wide descended from the sky. The blood-red light instantly descended and turned into a blood-red screen of light. The blood-red light screen enveloped all the experts. The experts who were unable to react in time were smashed by the bloody light and fell heavily to the ground. At the same time, the experts of the Blood Kindred and the Demon Clan who had rushed back from afar unleashed their terrifying attack. Waves of destructive power crushed down on the human expert. A great battle broke out at this moment. Leave the fairy and the Son of Heaven behind. Kill the rest. Using human blood to summon the Blood Emperor back. Beside the ancient formation, a young man in a blood-red robe next to the 8th prince said. His voice was extremely cold, and his tone was like that of a king giving an order. Moreover, his words were directed at the 8th prince. Yes. The 8th prince did not have the bearing of a crown prince in front of the young man in the blood-red robe. He even looked like a servant of the young man in the blood-red robe. The young man in the blood-red robe was not anyone else. He was the first crown prince of the blood-kindred Shuaio. The 8th prince was nothing in front of him. Instantly, the 8th prince received Shuaio's order to kill all of them, leaving only the Son of Heaven and the fairy to summon the Blood Emperor back. The other human experts were to be used for their blood and cultivation. Their blood and cultivation were to be used as sacrifices. Boom. Explosions continued. Screams of agony continued. One by one, the human experts fell. Even the saints were suppressed by the blood kindred and the demon clan saint. In an instant, the human experts were completely slaughtered, and they had no chance to fight back. On the side of the blood kindred and the demon clan, there were a dozen saints and the crown prince watching from the side. In 15 minutes, nearly 1,000 human experts had fallen. In 1 hour, more than 2,000 human experts had fallen. 2 hours later, the 2 human saints were dead. The battle was extremely tragic. In other words, the human race was tragic because the humans were being slaughtered. The demon clan and the blood kindred overwhelmed and killed the humans. It's over. In the battle, a woman with a veil on her face and a petite body. She was only a second tribulation half-true saint. But she had terrifying strength. The 10,000 pattern saint artifact in her hand exploded with destructive power, blocking the blood kindred experts. Many blood kindred and demon clan experts also noticed her strength and took a fancy to the 10,000 pattern saint artifact in her hand. In an instant, more than a dozen blood kindred and demon clan super half-true saints flew over. Seeing this, Zhuge Ling's heart sank. Yes, she was Zhuge Ling. She was also the one who had been transported from Tiny Spirit City to the Great Xia Holy City. After arriving at the Great Xia Holy City, she received the mission to rescue Fairy Yun Luo. She did not expect to fall into a shocking conspiracy. Just as she was about to be killed by more than a dozen half-true saints, in her sight, darkness descended eerily. The darkness was endless. It could cut off any sound, divine consciousness, and divine consciousness. In an instant, the darkness descended and shrouded the dozen half-true saints in darkness. Zhuge Ling only felt that her surroundings were silent. There was no sound at all. The entire world was silent. It was terrifyingly silent. Soon, the brief darkness disappeared. The silence also disappeared. Once again, the destructive waves of the battle were restored. But this time, Zhuge Ling was stunned. Because after the darkness, the dozen half-true saints who wanted to kill her died eerily. There was no sign of life in their bodies. They slowly fell to the ground. Captain. Horrifying. It was too horrifying. She could not figure out what method this was. It was so horrifying. But she quickly realized that the darkness was targeted at the blood kindred and demon clan experts. It did not affect her. Needless to say, the owner of the darkness was saving her. She looked into the distance in horror. A familiar figure appeared in her line of sight. She would never forget this figure. Captain. It was her captain. The captain of the God of War team, Lin Yi. He was the heaven-defying genius who had led them to the heaven roll. She did not expect that the first person she saw after surviving a disaster would be her captain. Could it be that her captain had saved her? But her captain did not know how to do this. But if it was not her captain, who would save her? Chapter 338. What are you doing here? Lin Yi walked towards Zhuge Ling amidst the countless experts from the blood race and the demonic race. Countless experts from the blood race and the demonic race attacked him, but they were all blocked by Silent Soul. He came in front of Zhuge Ling and asked casually, "Bad luck. Captain, aren't you here too?" Zhuge Ling was extremely happy. Only those who had experienced the excitement of surviving a calamity would understand, not to mention that the person who saved her was her captain. "I had to come." Lin Yi smiled. It was as if this destructive war had nothing to do with him. "Captain, Are you here to save Goddess Yunluo? Captain, let's leave this place quickly. This is a conspiracy of the blood race and the demonic race. Zhuge Ling was wearing a veil, so her expression couldn't be seen. However, her tone was anxious because she had arrived here before Lin Yi and knew the purpose of the blood race and the demonic race. She wanted to leave this place before the experts from the blood race and the demonic race acted. It's okay. Lin Yi shook his head and looked in the direction of the ancient array. Although he had just appeared, he had already arrived here. However, he had actually arrived here long ago. If Zhuge Ling was not in danger, he would not have appeared. Naturally, he knew more about this place. The blood race and the demonic race had close to 50,000 half-saints and 39 saints on the surface. However, there were 4 great sage experts hiding their cultivation. If he wasn't a divine will saint, he wouldn't have been able to discover these 4 great sage experts. On the human side, there were less than 10,000 half-saints and 17 saints. Captain. Zhuge Ling shouted but didn't continue. She knew Lin Ye's character. Once he had decided on something, no one could change his mind. Let's find a chance to leave this place later. Lin Yi stretched out his hand and the green hell glaze appeared. Silent Soul followed closely beside him. He took a step forward and walked towards the ancient array. The green hell glaze had reached the second stage and second form. The 18 green vines had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The attack of each vine was comparable to a 9th tribulation half-saint. Silent Soul, although only a 3rd tribulation half-saint. However, he possessed the terrifying light domain and darkness domain. There was also the origin of darkness, a supreme sacred artifact. With Dark Glaze and Silent Soul's help, he didn't even need to do anything. He walked towards the ancient array step by step, passing through countless blood breed and shifter elites, leaving a bloody path behind him. This earth-shattering commotion was witnessed by all the powerful beings from the human race, the blood tribe, and the demon race. Who is he? Who is this person? Is there such a person among the humans? Could he be a peerless genius secretly nurtured by the Grand Xia Holy City? He's only a 1st tribulation half-true saint. I can't see his strength, but that vine and that girl are terrifying. Lin Yi, it's Lin Yi. You want to save Goddess Yunluo by yourself? Isn't he being a little too confident? Be it humans, blood breeds, or shifters, they were all shocked to see Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and the Nether Glass. They didn't know where Lin Yi came from. On the battlefield, some of the powerful beings from Tiny Spirit City recognized Lin Yi. Rumble rumble Lin Ye's appearance caused a strange change in the battlefield. As he slowly approached the ancient array, hordes of blood breed and shifter elites attacked him. For a moment, bloody light soared into the sky, and destructive chi stirred the void. Heaven and earth changed color at this moment. However, from the beginning to the end, Lin Yi didn't make a single move. His hands were behind his back. Step by step, he walked towards the ancient array. On his face, there was a confident smile. Beside him, Silent Soul's darkness domain and light domain destroyed an area with every attack. The source of darkness destroyed heaven and earth, and the dark glaze destroyed the super half-true saints of the blood breed and the shifter race with every attack. At this moment, countless human elites were stunned. Countless blood breed and shifter elites were stunned. For a time, countless human powerhouses felt their blood boil as they looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of worship. Even if they didn't know Lin Ye's strength. But it was also a kind of ability for him to have such a strong helper. Facing countless blood breed and shifter race experts without fear, wasn't this strength? Yao Xing, you go. The 8th prince's expression was ugly. This was his territory, his world. He could tolerate lowering his head in front of Shueyo. But he didn't expect a mere 1st tribulation half-true saint to be so arrogant in front of him. Yes. Kill him with one claw. A young man who was 10 meters tall walked out. His body emitted a terrifying demonic chi. The blood breed and demon race were allies, and the blood breed was the master of the land of blood dragons. The demon race experts also had to listen to the blood breed. Yao Xing, ninth tribulation half-true saint. He was only a step away from being conferred the title of king. Even if he met a demon king, he wasn't afraid, not to mention a mere first tribulation half-true saint. In his opinion, he could kill him with one claw. As he spoke, his tall figure flashed, and he was extremely agile. He went in the direction of Lin Yi. Seeing Yao Xing appear, countless blood breed and shifter race experts quickly retreated, making a path for Yao Xing. With Yao Xing taking action, there was no need for them. Soon, Yao Xing was 1,000 meters away from Lin Yi. He didn't speak. Boom! Reaching out, a huge claw viciously slammed towards Lin Yi. In an instant, the space shattered. Endless fragments of space flew in all directions. That huge claw, with unparalleled power, appeared in front of Lin Yi in an instant, as if it was going to destroy this part of the world. What was unexpected was that Silent Soul and Qingming Liuli didn't seem to want to help Lin Yi block. Instead, they continued to kill the other blood breed and shifter race expert. "You're just an ant." Lin Yi looked at the huge claw and met it with a punch. Heavenly Emperor Fist, 6th level. This punch contained the power to destroy the heavens, and it was comparable to the full force of a peerless saint-rank martial skill. In an instant, everything in the world trembled. Space shattered, and the heavens were enraged. Boom! Claw fist. In an instant, they collided. Unparalleled wind swept in all directions, and wherever the wind passed, space was destroyed and everything was turned to dust. Following that, the claw was destroyed, and Yao Xing's huge body was also annihilated by this punch. The wind spread, and countless blood breed and shifter race experts disappeared. This was Lin Ye's current strength. This was the true power of the 6th level of the Heavenly Emperor Fist. The power of the 6th level of the Heavenly Emperor Fist was beyond imagination. With one punch, a 9th tribulation half-true saint expert, who was close to being a king realm expert, was annihilated. All the human experts, blood breed and shifter race experts were stunned at this moment. They couldn't believe what they had seen with their own eyes. It was too shocking and unreal. Was a first tribulation half-true saint really so strong? Even a king realm expert was annihilated with one punch. He was too strong. Lin Yi didn't stop from the beginning. It was as if killing a 9th tribulation half-true saint expert with one punch was as easy as waving his hand. "Kill him!" the 8th prince shouted. Chapter 339. Rumble. Rumble. Facing hundreds of half-step saints, Lin Yi made his move. Every single one of his attacks was filled with shocking power. Every time he waved his hand, hundreds and thousands of half-step saints disappeared. This kind of means and strength shocked the human, demonic beast, and blood race saints because of Lin Ye's strength. He had long surpassed their cultivation realm. The power of a first tribulation half-step saint was comparable to a saint. If they hadn't seen Lin Yi with their own eyes, they would have thought that he was a powerful saint. Only a saint would have such terrifying means. Lin Yi played it down every time. Every time, Lin Yi would destroy hundreds and thousands of half-step saints. For a time, the demonic beast and blood race were shocked. The human experts were pleasantly surprised and excited. The stronger Lin Yi was, the more beneficial it was for the human race. Otherwise, it would be a fool's dream to leave the land of the blood dragons. Die. Just as Lin Yi was killing in all directions, a figure flashed out from the 8th prince's side. When he appeared again, he was already in the air in front of Lin Yi. Without the slightest pause, he pointed a finger at Lin Yi. A saint. This was a saint. A saint's attack was like the wrath of the heavens. A saint's might could crush the world. Seeing a saint attack Lin Yi, all the human experts were stunned. They knew that although Lin Yi was powerful, he was still a saint. But compared to a saint, the difference was not just a little bit. In front of a saint, No matter how heaven-defying Lin Yi was, he would be crushed like an ant without any room to resist. You are also an ant. Just a slightly bigger ant. To everyone's surprise, not only was Lin Yi not afraid, but he also said arrogant words. He directly said that a saint was an ant, a slightly bigger ant. Arrogant, too arrogant. So arrogant that it was almost ignorant. A first tribulation half-step saint said that a saint was an ant. Was there anyone more arrogant than this? Absolutely not. There was absolutely no one more arrogant than Lin Yi. Just as everyone was still in shock, Lin Yi's body erupted with a shocking sword domain. The 90,000 sword domain tore apart the heavens and earth. This entire world was a world of swords. Lin Yi was the ruler of this world. He exuded an unparalleled saint aura. Holy Aureus, it was the saint's might. Only a saint could possess saint aura. He swung his 10,000 pattern saint weapon, Heavenly Edge. Sword light with sword domain tore through the space and slashed toward the Blood Clan saints. Everything in its path was reduced to nothing. How is this possible? 90,000 Dao sword domain. He is a saint. This sword realm is comparable to a pinnacle saint. How could this be? No, he's not a saint. At this moment, all the humans, kindred, and demons who saw Lin Yi attack were stunned. The saints opposite Lin Yi were already in a daze. Despair and unwillingness flashed across their eyes. Lin Yi's means had long surpassed that of a half-saint. A 90,000 Dao sword domain was something only a pinnacle saint could possess. He exuded the saint aura of a saint. However, he was only a first tribulation half-saint. They naturally didn't know that although Lin Yi's martial Dao was at the half-saint realm, his divine will had already reached the saint realm. Whether it was martial Dao or divine will, they were all his own. His divine will had reached the saint realm, so his half-saint aura had become saint aura. The 90,000 Dao sword domain was the result of his hard work in the Sky Universe Pagoda and Ninefold Space. Ah! A blood-curdling scream reverberated through the heavens and earth, breaking the countless shocked experts. Lin Yi's sword light sliced through the void and landed on the saint opposite him. The saint's finger force was annihilated. His body was directly torn apart by the sword domain and sword light. He turned into nothingness and dissipated between heaven and earth. A saint fell with one sword strike. It was that simple. There was no martial technique. All he had was the sword domain. One strike was enough. After the saint fell, Lin Yi made a grabbing motion across the air. A ball of light with saint aura was caught in his hand. Without hesitation, a jade bottle appeared in his hand. Lin Yi stuffed the ball of light into the jade bottle, then sealed the jade bottle and stored it in the ninefold space. Although the saint had died, his soul and saint aura hadn't dissipated. This was definitely a cultivation treasure for experts. One sword cold light of 19 prefectures. Sword chi traversing 30,000 miles. After keeping the jade bottle, Lin Yi slashed out with the sword in his hand. Suddenly, an icy sword light flashed across the heavens and earth. The blinding light made it hard for people to open their eyes. Endless sword chi swept across the heavens and earth. After a moment of silence, there wasn't a single blood race or demon race expert within a 10-mile radius. They were all killed by the sword light and sword chi. He might be the successor of the great Xia holy city. Kill him at all costs. The blood race's first crown prince, Shuaio. The expression on his face was extremely ugly. He was a heaven-defying monster, but after seeing Lin Yi's means and strength, he knew that he wasn't a match for Lin Yi. At least, he wasn't a match for Lin Yi when he was a half-true saint. More importantly, Lin Yi was only a first tribulation half-true saint. If a first tribulation half-true saint was so heaven-defying, it would be unimaginable if he became a saint. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. That was, that nameless young man might be the successor of the great Xia sacred city. At this moment, He couldn't care less about the heavenly maiden Yun Luo in the ancient formation or summoning the Blood Emperor. With Lin Yi around, summoning the Blood Emperor would be a dream. Moreover, they had to take advantage of the fact that Lin Yi had yet to mature and kill him. Use the source of darkness. I'll break the formation. Lin Yi transmitted his voice to Silent Soul as he slashed out with the sword in his hand. In an instant, he was engaged in a fierce battle with the 6 blood race saints. Facing 6 saints, he could only passively be at a disadvantage. He could only rely on his 5 elemental domain and sword domain to hold on. However, it wouldn't be easy for the 6 saints to kill him because his 5 elemental domain and sword domain were too strong. He could completely suppress the 6 saints. Source of darkness. Heaven and earth returned to silence. Silent Soul didn't hesitate at all. He stretched out his hand and a ball of darkness appeared in his slender hand. When the ball of darkness appeared, the surrounding 10,000 miles turned dark instantly. Divine sense, consciousness, and senses were all cut off at this moment. The entire world was silent, so silent that it was terrifying. Every human, blood race, and demon race trembled at this moment. This was the power of a supreme artifact. Supreme artifact. He actually has a supreme artifact. He is indeed the successor. The first prince of the blood race, Shueyo, was even more certain that Lin Yi was the successor of the great Xia holy city. Otherwise, why would he have a supreme artifact? Not only him, but even the human, demon, and blood race saints were certain that Lin Yi was the successor of the great Xia holy city. However, at this moment, they couldn't resist the power of the source of darkness. The source of darkness was a supreme artifact. Silent Soul, who had a terrifying dark domain, was in control of the source of darkness. To break the power of the source of darkness, only a saint who had a more powerful supreme artifact could do it. Chapter 340. In the darkness, Lin Yi was not affected at all. He took a step forward. His figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the ancient array. 9 cauldrons God suppression. 9 cauldrons appear. Lin Yi floated in the air and stretched out his hands. Suddenly, he looked like a god. The power to destroy heaven and earth was displayed on his body, and the void was constantly trembling. Then, 9 palm-sized cauldrons appeared in the air, and the 9 cauldrons became 10 meters in size. The 9 cauldrons formed a magical formation, and there was a mysterious connection between them. This was the 9 cauldrons. This was the 9 cauldrons God suppression. A supreme artifact, an existence that surpassed even a supreme artifact. The 9 cauldrons floated in the air above the ancient array. Lin Yi calmed down and pressed down on the ancient array. The 9 cauldrons and the ancient array collided. Crack rumble, there was a destructive explosion. Countless cracks appeared on the ancient array. Then, the ancient array was destroyed. Go! Lin Yi shouted, and the cold sky aurora cut through the space, cutting off the mysterious chain on Goddess Yun Luo's collarbone. Then, he pushed with both hands, and an unparalleled power swept through countless humans and threw them into the distance. At this moment, Silent Soul spat out a mouthful of blood. The supreme artifact darkness source could no longer hold on. The darkness disappeared. Everything returned to normal. Although the supreme artifact was powerful, Silent Soul's cultivation was too weak, and he could not hold on for too long. Retreat. Lin Yi saw Silent Soul's appearance and grabbed with one hand. Silent Soul's figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in the 9-fold space. Then, he shouted at the human experts, asking them to retreat. Go! Go! The human experts in the Great Xia Sacred City knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they missed this opportunity, it would be impossible to leave the land of the Blood Dragon. Immediately, some experts grabbed the humans who were imprisoned in the ancient array and quickly flew into the sky. Roar at this moment. Under the destroyed ancient array, a shocking roar sounded. An altar slowly rose. As the altar rose, roars continued to sound from below. Cracks continuously appeared on the altar. Bloody light seeped out from the cracks, and blood flowed out. This scene was incomparably frightening. Ha 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 ha! The Blood Emperor has awakened. The first prince of the Blood clan, Shui-Ao, originally hated Lin Yi to the core. Because his plan had been foiled by Lin Yi. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi used a supreme sacred weapon to break the ancient formation and the altar. Then, he released the Blood Emperor who was under the altar. Blood Emperor! Blood Emperor! Blood Emperor! The powerful beings of the Blood tribe had already prostrated themselves on the ground. He kept calling out Blood Emperor's name. It was the same for saints. Only the Demon Clan's experts bowed and watched from the side because the Blood Emperor wasn't from the Demon Clan. This Emperor is back. The voice seemed to come from ancient times. It was filled with vicissitudes and arrogance. Under the voice, everyone felt an unparalleled pressure. Some of the human experts with low cultivation spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Their faces were pale. Most of them were shocked and scared. They didn't expect this to happen. In an instant, the retreating human experts ran even more desperately. This emperor hasn't drunk human blood for a long time. Since this emperor is back, all of you can stay. Below the altar, the voice was getting closer and louder. Gradually, the supreme oppressive force became even more terrifying, causing the human powerhouses who were fleeing to be unable to breathe. Towards the end, the entire space seemed to have frozen. Lin Yi was floating in the air. The expression on his face kept changing. He didn't expect this to happen. Previously, when the Demon Master was born, it had nothing to do with him. Moreover, he had killed the Demon Master's clone. The Demon Master alone was enough to give the humans a headache. He didn't expect the Blood Emperor to be born because of him. Although the Blood Emperor wasn't born on purpose, it was because he had used a supreme sacred artifact. Thinking of this, he felt extremely depressed. Even though he didn't know how powerful the Blood Emperor was, thinking of the Demon Master who was sealed, the Blood Emperor might be at the same level as the Demon Master. Swoosh, his figure flashed and he was about to leave. Although he was depressed, he didn't do it on purpose. If he didn't leave now, he wouldn't be able to leave when the Blood Emperor came out. But just as he flew up, it shattered. A middle-aged man in a green robe appeared. The middle-aged man's gaze was like a knife and his entire body was emitting a terrifying aura. The entire universe seemed to revolve around him. His gaze was blood-red. The corner of his mouth had a bloodthirsty smile. When he looked at Lin Yi's body was imprisoned in the air and he couldn't move at all. The Blood Emperor really came out. At this moment, it wasn't just Lin Yi. Countless human experts were imprisoned in the air, and they couldn't move at all. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear. So terrifying. At his peak, he was at least the great sage. Lin Yi was extremely shocked. Blood Emperor's technique was too shocking. With just a glance, he could imprison countless people and make them unable to move. With such means and strength, he definitely wasn't weaker than the great sage at his peak. Even after being sealed for tens of thousands of years, he was still so terrifying when he came out. The Heaven Realm was the peak of martial artists. The Half-Saint Realm was the beginning of the Saint Realm. After the 9th Tribulation Half-Saint Realm, one would become a saint. However, even if one became a saint, it was only the beginning. Stronger than a saint was the great sage. Stronger than a great sage was the heavenly saint. Stronger than a heavenly saint was the absolute saint. The peak of the saint realm was the holy king. The Blood Emperor in front of him was definitely not weaker than the great sage at his peak. Saint, great sage, heavenly saint, absolute saint, holy king. His divine will had just become a saint. His martial cultivation was only at the first tribulation half-saint realm. While Lin Yi was still in shock, the space around him suddenly shattered. The Blood Emperor stretched out his hand and grabbed him. Without any resistance, he was imprisoned 10 meters away in the air by the Blood Emperor. Lin Ye's divine will moved and the power of space was unleashed. His body shook strangely and he broke free from the Blood Emperor's imprisonment. When he reappeared, he was standing in the air a few miles away. He looked at the Blood Emperor in shock. Luckily, he had the power of space. Otherwise, he would have died here. There was a flash of surprise in the Blood Emperor's eyes. He didn't expect a mere human to be able to break free from his imprisonment. 9 Cauldrons God Suppression. Lin Yi didn't dare to hesitate. He used the 9 Cauldrons God Suppression as soon as he attacked. The 9 cauldrons spun and smashed toward the Blood Emperor with destructive power. You overestimate yourself. The Blood Emperor's voice was filled with anger. Chapter 341. In the center of the Blood Dragon Land, there were close to 10,000 human experts and 40,000 blood race and demonic race experts. At this moment, everyone was looking up at the sky. In the sky, Lin Yi executed the 9 cauldrons God-suppressing martial skill, and the 9 cauldrons smashed towards the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor was enraged, and he unleashed a destructive attack towards Lin Yi. One of them was a first-level half-saint. The other was the Blood Emperor who had been sealed in the primordial era. Even if his cultivation had dropped after being sealed for 10 million years, he was still 1,000 times stronger than a first tribulation half-saint. Logically speaking, it was impossible for the two of them to fight. But now, the two of them were fighting. Boom! The 9 cauldrons had reached the pinnacle and surpassed the existence of a supreme saint artifact. Although Lin Yi was unable to unleash its full power, it was still a terrifying supreme sacred weapon. Coupled with the 9 cauldrons God-suppressing martial skill, a full-powered attack could destroy the heavens and earth. When the 9 cauldrons God-suppressing martial skill collided with the Blood Emperor's attack, heaven and earth crumbled. Everything within 100 miles was in ruins. Lin Ye's body flew out like a kite with a broken string, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and powerless, but the corner of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. The 9 cauldrons God-suppressing martial skill surpassed the saint realm. The 9 cauldrons God-suppressing martial skill surpassed the level of a supreme saint artifact. Even such an existence couldn't push the Blood Emperor back with a full-powered attack. One could imagine how terrifying the Blood Emperor was. It was even more unimaginable how strong the Blood Emperor was before he was sealed. One had to know that Lin Yi was only a first tribulation half-saint now. But with his holy aura, his strength was absolutely unrivaled in the half-saint realm. It wouldn't be a problem for him to fight against an ordinary saint. The power of the 9 cauldrons God-suppressing martial skill was unimaginable. So that's all there is to it. Even if you were the great sage at your peak. Now you are at most a late-stage saint. Lin Yi floated in the air. He looked coldly at the Blood Emperor. Even though he hadn't injured the Blood Emperor, he could roughly guess how strong the Emperor was. Blood Emperor. That allowed him to guess Blood Emperor's current strength. There were tens of thousands of experts present, including humans, vampires, and demons. When they saw that Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor were still alive, they were shocked. What made them sigh even more was that Lin Yi actually said that the Blood Emperor was only SOSO. Wasn't this a bit too arrogant? Or perhaps it was too ignorant and pointless. Not bad. Among all the human juniors I've met, you're one of the best. Surprise flashed in the Blood Emperor's cold and blood-red eyes. He was a little surprised by this human junior. That was because he had unleashed his full strength after awakening from his slumber. Even though his strength was greatly weakened, it wasn't something a mere first tribulation, half-true saint could withstand. However, this human youth was able to withstand it. Moreover, this young man had guessed the depth of his current strength. That's right, his current strength was at most a peak saint. If he didn't end the battle quickly, he wouldn't be able to afford it. Moreover, if the battle dragged on, it would affect his recovery. Therefore, he had to end everything in front of him in the shortest time possible. Since he's only a pinnacle saint, then you'll stay here forever. There's no need to seal me anymore. Lin Yi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The injuries on his body had already healed the moment he was injured. This was the heaven-defying ability of the self-healing physique. It allowed one to recover from injuries in an instant. Lin Yi kept the 9 cauldrons, and his aura suddenly changed. He stretched out his hand, and a folding fan appeared in his hand. 3,000 heavenly daos revolved, and a supreme divine sense burst out. The strength of a saint was fully displayed at this moment. Although the saint realm was only equivalent to an early-stage saint, it was already enough. That was because a divine spiritual master was invincible in the same realm. It wouldn't be a problem even if they were 1 or 2 levels higher. Therefore, he was confident that he could fight against the Blood Emperor. Of course, that was before the Blood Emperor recovered. Boom! At this moment, the sky changed color. Countless experts almost fell to the ground. Even the saints of the human race, the blood race, and the demonic race felt a terrifying pressure, and a great threat of death appeared in their hearts. Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. He's a Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. Countless experts, including the demonic race and the blood race expert. Sensing the change in Lin Ye's aura, they all recognized that Lin Yi was a divine spiritual master. Moreover, his cultivation had reached the Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master level. He was a true Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. A Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master could instantly kill someone of the same realm. At that moment, everyone was stunned. Whether it was the demonic race, the blood race, or the humans, almost all of them cultivated martial arts. There might be one Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master in 10,000 people. However, there might not be one Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master in 1,000,000 saints. Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Masters had almost become a legend. They only existed in legends and didn't exist in reality. No one expected Lin Yi to be a Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. Moreover, he was a 20-year-old Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. One could imagine his future. So, you're a Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. The Blood Emperor's blood-red eyes also showed a trace of seriousness and solemnity. Although he was powerful at his peak, he had been tens of thousands of years ago. His strength was not even 1/10,000th of his peak strength. He had just awakened and was not used to fighting. He didn't take ordinary saints seriously. However, he had encountered a monstrous Saint Realm Divine Spiritual Master. He had no choice but to take this seriously. Otherwise, he might fail miserably and be consigned to eternal damnation. Fury of Thunder. Lin Yi waved the folding fan in his hand. Suddenly, an unparalleled divine spiritual master triggered the tribulation of thunder. There were endless lightning arcs within 100 miles. Every lightning arc could turn a demonic saint into dust. After his divine spiritual master reached the saint realm, his divine spiritual master attacks were the same, but the power was millions of times stronger. This fury of thunder was the same. It was countless times stronger than the last time he used it. Whoosh, whoosh. The battle between saints was devastating. The fury of thunder under the Tiani fan instantly shattered the confined space. Countless human experts who were confined and couldn't escape didn't dare to hesitate at this moment. They suppressed their curiosity and quickly escaped. The blood race and demonic race experts couldn't react in time. Immediately, they were met with a calamity. Everything within 100 miles was destroyed. Rumble, rumble. The ground kept collapsing. The void continued to shatter. The Blood Emperor exploded with destructive power. Blood chi soared into the sky and blood light shone. Lin Ye's Tianyi fan also unleashed the fury of thunder to the extreme. At the same time, the soul voice and sky heart pierce burst out from time to time. Lin Ye's divine spiritual master attacks were all performed at this moment. In an instant, countless blood race and demonic race experts disappeared. Countless mountains were leveled to the ground. Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor, the battle between saints destroyed the world. No one knew who was more powerful between Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor. Time passed by minute. After an unknown period of time, the battle ended. Tens of thousands of blood race and demonic race experts were buried. The human experts all escaped. No one knew whether Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor were dead or alive. Only tens of thousands of miles of collapsed land was left in the land of the Blood Dragon. Chapter 342. The battle at the land of blood dragons shook both the blood race and the demonic race. The human experts in the Grand Xia Holy City were even more shocked. The situation at the land of blood dragons had been recorded by the Grand Xia Holy City's monstrous experts through their memory crystals. Lin Yi had single-handedly turned the tide and saved the holy maiden Yun Luo and the others. More than 10,000 experts in the Grand Xia Holy City had escaped with their lives. What shocked the Grand Xia Holy City's experts was Lin Ye's strength. He was actually able to fight against the Blood Emperor. His identity as a divine will saint spread like wildfire. In an instant, Lin Yi was hailed as the #1 monstrous expert in the Grand Xia Holy City. Even saints didn't dare to say that they had the confidence to fight against Lin Yi. After all, Lin Yi was an existence that could fight against the Blood Emperor. Even if the Blood Emperor had been sealed for millions of years, it was impossible for him to be at his peak. However, there was something that made people curious. There was no news about Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor. No one knew if Lin Yi or the Blood Emperor had won that battle. 1 month later, they finally received accurate news. Lin Yi was injured and had returned to the Grand Xia Holy City. The Blood Emperor was heavily injured and had escaped. This time, the Grand Xia Holy City was shaken. They weren't shaken because Lin Yi was injured. They were shocked that Lin Yi could survive in front of the Blood Emperor and even injure him. A first tribulation half-true saint was actually a divine will saint. In the Grand Xia Holy City, no one knew how strong the Blood Emperor was. However, many saints knew that they might not be able to survive if they encountered the Blood Emperor. However, Lin Yi did it. Not only did he do it, but he also injured the Blood Emperor. It could even be said that the Blood Emperor had escaped from Lin Ye's hands. After a short moment of excitement, the human experts in the Grand Xia Holy City had to face a problem. That was the invasion of the 4 races. Although the Blood Emperor was injured, the Blood Emperor's recovery speed was terrifying. He was injured by Lin Yi because the Blood Emperor had just awakened. If the Blood Emperor recovered for a period of time, no one would be able to stop him. A Devil Lord, a Blood Emperor, together with the Demon Lord of the Demon Clan, these 3 unparalleled experts would cause the humans of the Great Xia to be doomed eternally. For a moment, the atmosphere of the Great Xia was extremely oppressive. Many people had thought of eradicating the Demon Master and the Blood Emperor before they recovered. However, they were all aware that the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master were in their own camp. Who had the power to kill them? He returned to the sacred city of the Great Xia. Lin Yi had been in seclusion ever since. His injuries were all external. With his self-healing body, he recovered almost instantly. As for divine consciousness, the Blood Emperor couldn't hurt him. Moreover, he still had the soul suppression cauldron in his sea of consciousness. Even without the soul-suppressing cauldron, Biluo was more than enough. Blood Emperor Nether / Lower Grade Supreme Sacred Artifact. Light of the Milky Way, a lower grade supreme sacred artifact. Sacred Inferno Armor, lower grade supreme sacred artifact. Glacier Fissure, lower grade supreme sacred artifact. Taishan Shield, a high grade supreme sacred artifact. Lin Yi sat cross-legged in the palace of the Sage Palace. He opened the 9 layers space with his divine consciousness, and 5 sealed items appeared in front of him. Although they were simply sealed, the aura that they exuded was still terrifying. A supreme sacred artifact was indeed a supreme sacred artifact. Even if it was sealed, the terrifying holy aura still gave people a strong sense of oppression. These were the 5 supreme sacred artifacts. All of them came from the 8th level of the Sky Treasure Pagoda. Since the heaven list points were useless, he exchanged them for supreme sacred artifacts and other precious treasures. Now, before the war in the Great Xia world, he had to refine these few supreme sacred artifacts. Even if he couldn't unleash their full power, a little bit of their power would be useful to him. He had even more powerful supreme sacred artifacts with him. For example, the 9 cauldrons. For example, the 3 supreme sacred artifacts that he had exchanged for on the 9th level of the Sky Treasure Pagoda. For example, the 2 supreme sacred artifacts that he had obtained when the Demon Master was born. However, these weren't things that he could refine and control now. The reason why he could refine and integrate the 9 cauldrons was because he had cultivated the 9 cauldrons' god suppression. Otherwise, with his cultivation strength, he wouldn't have been able to refine the 9 cauldrons. Sacred Flame Armor, Fire Element. Flame Element. With the addition of the Crimson Flames, even if it's not a complete set of sacred artifacts, its power is still several times stronger than a single sacred artifact. Lin Yi looked at the palm-sized sacred flame armor and muttered to himself. He had already mastered the Crimson Flames. The Crimson Flames belonged to the fire element, and so did the sacred flame armor. The power that the 2 supreme sacred artifacts could unleash at the same time was unimaginable. Of course, the Crimson Flames and the Sacred Flame Armor weren't a complete set of sacred artifacts. The power that they could unleash naturally couldn't be compared to a complete set of supreme sacred artifacts. However, a supreme sacred artifact was still a supreme sacred artifact. Its power was terrifying. Then, Lin Yi started to refine the Sacred Flame Armor. Sacred Flame Armor. Lower grade supreme sacred artifact defense type. When worn, it could block 90% of the attacks. With the sacred armor, in addition to the Divine Dragon 9 transformations and absolute defense, ordinary saints wouldn't be able to break through his defense. Even if he were to meet Blood Emperor again, he wouldn't be afraid. Of course, Blood Emperor would become even more terrifying in a short period of time. 3 days passed. The Sacred Flame Armor was successfully refined. After refining the Sacred Flame Armor, Lin Yi didn't get up but continued to refine the Supreme Sacred Artifact. Taishan Shield Defense. Ice River Split Attack. Milky Way Light Attack. Blood Emperor Hell Slash Attack. He refined all of the Supreme Sacred Artifact. Of course, with his current cultivation, he couldn't unleash even 1/10,000th of the Supreme Sacred Artifact's power. Even so, the Supreme Sacred Artifact was comparable to a Super 10,000 Inscriptions Sacred Artifact. 1 month later, Lin Yi controlled all of the Supreme Sacred Artifact. He calculated. He had a total of 14 Supreme Sacred Artifact. However, he could only refine and control 8 of them. Moreover, he could only unleash a little of their power. This was more than enough. A First Tribulation half-true saint could possess so many supreme sacred artifacts. This was definitely unprecedented. Generally speaking, it was already very good for a saint to have 1,000 inscriptions sacred artifact. Powerful saints pursued a 10,000 inscriptions sacred artifact. As for a supreme sacred artifact, saints didn't even dare to think about it. Other than these supreme sacred artifacts, Lin Yi also had divine sense treasures, as well as some precious 1,000 inscriptions sacred artifacts and 10,000 inscriptions sacred artifacts, as well as precious jade talismans. They all came from the Heavenly Treasure Pagoda in Tiny Spirit City. It's time to raise my cultivation. Lin Yi kept the various treasures well. After returning to the Great Xia Holy City for more than a month, he had been in seclusion refining treasures. Thinking about his cultivation realm, it was time to raise it. First tribulation half-true saint limited his strength. With a thought, Zhang Xian disappeared from sight. When he reappeared, he was already in the 9 layers space. Young master. Seeing Lin Yi, Silent Soul opened her beautiful eyes. She stopped cultivating and greeted Lin Yi. You've recovered, right? Chapter 343. I've already recovered. Silent Soul bowed and nodded. Using the supreme artifact darkness pool in the land of the blood dragon had consumed too much of her energy, causing her to almost suffer a backlash. She then entered the 9-fold space to heal, and with the help of the chaotic divine tree, it took her nearly a month to fully recover. The supreme artifact was indeed powerful, but if one's cultivation was too low, it would easily backfire. I've been in the Grand Xia Holy City for a while now. Let's find a few altars before the war, Lin Yi said. He already knew that there were a total of 9 altars in the Grand Xia Holy City, and each altar had a page of the wordless heavenly book. Now that he had 2 pages of the wordless heavenly book, he had to find the other 7 pages. When all 9 pages were gathered, he would be able to see all the information of the wordless heavenly book. He would also be able to see the secrets of the Grand Xia Holy City. Gongzi, when do you want to leave? Silent Soul asked. Her injuries had already healed, and she could leave the Grand Xia Holy City with Lin Yi at any time. Today. Lin Ye's figure disappeared. When he came out, Silent Soul followed him out. They walked out of the Holy Palace. They headed straight for the Guardian. Greetings, Guardian. Lin Yi came in front of the Guardian and bowed. Although he was already a divine sense saint, the Guardian gave him an unfathomable feeling. He knew that this was because the Guardian was too powerful. The higher one's cultivation, the more one would discover the Guardian's strength. Based on his guess, the Guardian of the Grand Xia Holy City was definitely not an ordinary saint, but a powerful great sage. Ready to leave? The Guardian glanced at Lin Yi. Yes. There are a few places I need to go. I'll return once I'm done. Lin Yi nodded. Go. The place you want to go is here. However, you have to return before the war, otherwise all your efforts will be in vain. The Guardian waved his hand. A scroll appeared in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi had seen this scroll before. He had seen it once from Ling Yanyu. Seeing the Guardian pass the scroll to him, he reached out and took it. He was curious about the meaning of the Guardian's words. However, he did not ask the Guardian. This was because he knew that the Guardian would only tell him what he wanted to know if the Guardian was willing to tell him. If the Guardian didn't want to tell him, the Guardian wouldn't tell him even if he asked. There's still 1 year before we leave. Are you sure the war will break out within a year? Lin Yi looked at the Guardian. Destined. There are some things that you shouldn't know yet. Go. The Guardian said. After he finished speaking, he closed his eyes and rested. He had no intention of talking to Lin Yi again. Lin Yi took the scroll and left doubtfully. Young master, what's on this scroll? After leaving the sacred palace, the 2 of them directly headed out of the Grand Xia Holy City. Along the way, Solitary Spirit asked Lin Yi. Her beautiful eyes filled with curiosity. This was the first time she had seen such a scroll. Take a look. Lin Yi handed the scroll to Silent Soul. He was still thinking about the meaning of the Guardian's words. Was it destined? Is the opening of the Grand Xia world every 50 years destined? Or are other things destined? This was all a mystery, and he was deeply immersed in it. Young master, this scroll records the location of the altars. You've already been to this altar. And this altar is where the Demon Lord was born. The place where the Demon Lord was born is also an altar. Did the Demon Lord obtain the wordless heavenly book? Just as Lin Yi was deep in thought, Silent Soul's voice reached Lin Ye's ears. Hearing Silent Spirit's voice, Lin Yi was also shocked in his heart and hurriedly took the scroll from Silent Spirit's hands. On the scroll, there were 9 symbols with red dot. Seeing these symbols, Lin Yi's expression kept changing. Because these symbols were the locations of the 9 altars. Also, as Silent Soul said, the place where the Demon Lord was born is also an altar. So that's it. So that's it. Lin Yi muttered to himself. The expression on his face became incomparably interesting. The thing he was most worried about was still there, but he found out about it a little late. Last time in the Hidden Realm, after the Demon Lord came out, he gave up on him and went straight to the altar. He was very curious, and later connected the Demon Lord to the wordless heavenly book. But he wasn't sure. Now it seemed that everything was as he thought. The place where the Demon Lord was born is an altar. In other words, the Demon Lord had a page of the wordless heavenly book. The Demon Lord went to the other altar for the wordless heavenly book, but Lin Yi beat him to it. When the Demon Lord saw that the wordless heavenly book on the altar was missing, he was furious and flattened the altar. "Mister, would the Blood Emperor have the wordless heavenly book?" Silent Soul's gentle and sweet voice reached Lin Yi's ears. This was what Lin Yi was most worried about. The Demon Lord having the wordless heavenly book was already troublesome. If the Blood Emperor had the wordless heavenly book, things would become even more troublesome. It was too difficult to gather all 9 pages of the wordless heavenly book. Unless he killed the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor. Let's go somewhere else first. Let's hope the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor set up the wordless heavenly book. Lin Yi sighed. The hope in his heart, even he didn't believe it. At this moment, he understood the meaning of the Guardian's words. He had to return during the battle, otherwise everything would be for naught. Didn't that mean the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor had the wordless heavenly book? He had 2 pages of the wordless heavenly book. The Blood Emperor might have 1 page. The Demon Lord might have 1 page. What about the Demon Lord? The Demon Lord that never appeared. That's Lin Yi. Lin Yi, who single-handedly turned the tide and saved Goddess Yun Luo. I didn't expect him to be so young. He's really only around 20 years old. I really didn't expect him to be a divine will saint. Even the Blood Emperor who had been sealed for thousands of years was severely injured by him. If he was given a few more decades or centuries, he might really be able to wipe out the 4 races. He's Lin Yi. The experts of the Great Xia Sacred City saw Lin Yi and Silent Soul. They all looked at them with admiration. For a moment, whispers of discussion could be heard. In the Great Xia Sacred City, Lin Yi's name became the hottest topic. However, very few people had seen Lin Yi's face. They had only seen Lin Yi's portrait. Now that they saw him in person, they were all extremely shocked. Lin Yi and Silent Soul saw that they had become the focus of attention and quickly sped out of the Great Xia Sacred City. 2 hours. The two finally left the Great Xia Sacred City. After finding the right direction, they quickly flew away. Chapter 344. In the Grand Xia world, war had broken out. Other than Tiny Spirit City, the other 8 regions were invaded by the 4 races. Demonic race, and demons. There were millions of half-step saints and saints. Humans who encountered them were reduced to ashes. 1 month. Central Blue Sky City fell. 2 months. Spiritual Dragon Sky City fell. 3 months. Demon Sealing Sky City fell. In just 7 months, other than Tiny Spirit City, the other 7 sky cities fell into the hands of the 4 races. All humans in the Grand Xia world fled to the Grand Xia Holy City. The monstrous geniuses who were sent over from Tiny Spirit City. Those who survived came to the Grand Xia Holy City. The Grand Xia Holy City became the last safe place for humans in the Grand Xia world. If the Grand Xia Holy City fell, humans would cease to exist. The Grand Xia world would become the world of the 4 races. Humans would disappear from the Grand Xia world or become the slaves of the 4 races. In an instant, the Grand Xia Holy City was filled with people. The The dark clouds of defeat pressed down on the hearts of the human experts. 7 months. Lin Yi also returned to the Grand Xia Holy City. During this period of time, he had searched through all the altars. He was more or less sure that the Blood Emperor and Archdevil Lord had the wordless heavenly book. Because he searched all the altars, he only found 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book. 3 pages were missing. In his sea of consciousness, the 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book merged together. But without a complete body, it would always be incomplete. Calculating the time, he had been in the Grand Xia World ruins for more than 2 years. In less than half a year, he would have to leave the Grand Xia World ruins. Now, his cultivation was no longer at the first tribulation half-true saint realm. He had reached the 5th tribulation half-true saint realm. In 7 months, his cultivation had reached the 5th tribulation half-true saint realm. Silent Soul's cultivation had also reached the peak of the 6th tribulation half-true saint realm. Captain Lin Yi and Silent Soul had just entered the Grand Xia Holy City when they heard a familiar voice. Looking in the direction of the voice, it was indeed a member of his God of War team. Xiao Yanqing was sent to the Demon Sealing Sky City. Now that the Demon Sealing Sky City had fallen, she came to the Grand Xia Holy City. Zhou Baiyu and Xuefeng were with him. Just the 3 of you. Where are the others? Lin Yi asked as he looked at Xiao Yanqing and the other 2. His divine sense, they were all 4th tribulation half-true saint. To be able to raise his cultivation from 1st tribulation half-true saint to 4th tribulation half-true saint in less than a year, it was no easy feat. No wonder he was called the Heavenly Sun Empire's monstrous genius. Although his talent was not as good as that of a peak-level genius, it was not far off. Moreover, to truly become a powerhouse, it wasn't just talent that was needed, but also luck, opportunity, and wisdom. There was no doubt that Xiao Yanqing and the others were lucky. By following him, their starting point had been raised. Naturally, their achievements were not inferior to those top geniuses. In fact, they were even stronger than those top geniuses. Heavenly heavens, heavenly divine, heavenly divine. Captain, they're all here. I went to the Time Moon Paradise to cultivate, Zhou Baiyu said. They had been in the sacred city of the Grand Xia for almost a month. She was more familiar with the Grand Xia Holy City than Lin Yi. In the past month, they had heard about Lin Yi everywhere. A divine sense saint who fought against the Blood Emperor alone and seriously injured him. He saved Heavenly Lady Yun Luo and tens of thousands of human experts. His strength was invincible among half-true saints. Even in the face of a saint, he was still very powerful. After all, a divine sense saint wasn't a joke. They had long admired their captain from the bottom of their hearts, but they didn't expect their captain's strength to be so terrifying. In the beginning, the Grand Xia Holy City's experts didn't believe it. It wasn't until later that they found out that the rumors were true. "Where are you guys staying?" Lin Yi asked. Although the Grand Xia Holy City was huge, it was overcrowded with experts from the 7 heavenly cities. Finding a place to stay was a problem. He didn't know if Zhou Baiyu and the others had a place to stay. "In the Holy Palace. It's near your palace," Xuefeng said with a trace of curiosity in his eyes. He didn't know why they were arranged to stay in the Holy Palace. It was because the rest of the geniuses who were teleported from Wiling City lived far away from the Holy Palace. They were the only ones who were arranged to stay in the Holy Palace. It wasn't that they weren't confident. It was that they knew their limit. With their strength and talent, they hadn't reached this level of treatment. They felt that they were arranged to stay in the Holy Palace because of Lin Yi. It was just that the guardian of the Holy Palace didn't say anything. Naturally, they wouldn't ask. "Let's go back first," Lin Yi said. Then, he stepped forward and walked forward. Zhou Baiyu and the others didn't say anything and followed behind Lin Yi. In the Holy Palace, Lin Yi leaned against the main seat while Silent Soul stood beside him. Zhou Baiyu and the others sat down after Lin Yi gestured. Tell me about the situation you guys encountered. How's the Great Xia World ruins now? Lin Yi looked at Xuefeng and asked. He also knew that the other sky cities had all fallen, but he didn't know what happened to those sky cities. There were only 8 sky cities and 1 holy city in the Great Xia World. However, there were many large and small cities around the sky cities and holy city. There were also countless human natives. The 4 races invaded the human world. He didn't know what happened to those cities and the human natives. Demon Sealing Sky City, other than the main city. The other cities have all fallen. The main city has guardians and defenses. The armies of the 4 races couldn't break through. However, the main city is now alone. All the experts have been teleported to the Great Xia Holy City. Xuefeng said. When the 4 races invaded the human world only had ordinary experts and armies to resist. The Guardians couldn't leave the main city. The Guardians couldn't do anything either. They only had the duty to protect the main city. Although the armies of the 4 races had conquered countless other cities, they couldn't do anything to the Guardians and the main city's defenses. The Guardians didn't do anything? The main city's defenses are so strong. Lin Yi listened to Xuefeng's words. He was shocked and puzzled. He hadn't seen the strength of the Guardians of the Great Xia World, but he knew that these Guardians were all very powerful. They were definitely not comparable to ordinary saints. With these Guardians in charge, the cities were safe. However, he didn't expect that the Guardians wouldn't do anything or leave the cities. It was as if they were restricted by some rules. Yes, the Guardians don't leave the cities or do anything. However, I feel that every Guardian is in existence on the level of the Great Sage. The Sky City I'm in is the same as the Demon Sealing Sky City. Zhou Baiyu said. Xiao Yanqing nodded, indicating that it was the same for her Sky City. Lin Yi looked at the 3 of them and fell into deep thought. Needless to say, the Sky Cities and Holy City in the Great Xia World were the same. The Guardians wouldn't do anything or leave the city. The Guardians' existence was probably just to protect the main city and the humans in the main city. Chapter 345. What is the strength of the 4 armies that attacked the Sky City? After pondering for a long time, Lin Yi finally spoke. The other Sky Cities had fallen. He didn't know how strong the 4 armies were. More importantly, he wanted to know if the Blood Emperor and the Demon Lord were still there. If they were in the army, it meant that they had recovered. If not, the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor must be recovering in their base camp. The Celestial Army. The Half-Sage Army. There are also countless sages. Their strength is several times stronger than the human army. If the main cities didn't have guardians and defenses, the humans in the Great Xia World would have been destroyed by the 4 races. Xiao Yanqing roughly explained the strength of the 4 armies. However, they knew that the strength of the 4 races was far more than that. Since the 4 races dared to invade the humans, they must have something to rely on. There are still a few months left. We have to leave. Use this time to improve your cultivation. Don't die in the war. Lin Yi said seriously. Before entering the Great Xia World ruins, they didn't know each other. However, after entering the Great Xia World ruins, Xuefeng and the rest were his team members. He hoped that all of his team members would return to the Tianyang Empire from the Great Xia World in one piece. Understood. Xuefeng nodded. The other 2 nodded. After that, the 3 of them left Lin Ye's palace and returned to their own cultivation grounds. Lin Yi also began to cultivate in seclusion. This was because Biluo, who had been in a deep sleep, had woken up. He had to ask Biluo about the realm. His 5 elements realm and sword realm had reached more than 90,000 traces. Any more and it would be the limit of 10%. He knew that the guardian of the Great Xia World knew that he had a heaven-defying treasure like the ninefold space. However, he didn't expose it and turned a blind eye. With a thought, he entered the ninefold space. 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book. 3 more pages and it will be complete. After entering the ninefold space, Biluo appeared in front of him and glanced at Lin Yi. Biluo said, "The other 3 pages are difficult. They might be in the hands of the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor." Lin Yi said. He told her about his guesses and what he had encountered. "Perhaps in their hands. However, they don't know that this is the wordless heavenly book," Biluo said. "How so?" Lin Yi looked at Biluo in confusion. The wordless heavenly book itself was an accident in the Grand Xia. Or rather, it was a conspiracy. If you hadn't said that it was the wordless heavenly book, even I wouldn't have known. So, it's impossible for the Demon Master and the Blood Emperor to know about the wordless heavenly book. Furthermore, even if they had secret techniques, they wouldn't be able to transmit the information here to the outside world. This is the law of the world. As long as the ruler of the Grand Xia doesn't want it, no one can transmit the information outside. Biluo said. When Lin Yi obtained the first page of the wordless heavenly book, he had undergone a bloodline baptism. Indeed, he didn't obtain the wordless heavenly book because he was a member of the demons, and blood race. It was also the mysterious voice that told him that the golden page was the wordless heavenly book. Otherwise, no one would know what the golden page was. Even so, it's too difficult to obtain the wordless heavenly book from the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor. It was so terrifying when it was just born. After it recovered, it would be unimaginable. Lin Ye's expression turned solemn. He had already obtained 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book. He was still short of 3 pages. However, these 3 pages might be in the hands of the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor. Just thinking about it made him depressed. If it was in the hands of others, he could still snatch it. However, the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor were existences that could snatch it whenever they wanted. There will be a way when the car reaches the mountain. What do you plan to do now? Biluo looked at Lin Yi and asked. What she had experienced was far beyond what Lin Yi could compare to. She also knew that many things were predetermined. Even in a desperate situation, there would be a trace of hope. After all, there was nothing absolute in this world. There was always a trace of hope in everything. My cultivation realm has already reached the 5th tribulation half-true saint realm. It's obviously impossible to work on my cultivation realm. I would like to have a breakthrough in my domain. Lin Yi revealed his current plans. After saying that, he looked at Biluo. I told you last time. There are 100% domains. The difference between every 10% is incomparable, whether it's the power or the difficulty of cultivation. When one's domain reaches a certain level, they will have to undergo a tribulation. If they succeed, their strength will skyrocket and they will obtain heaven-defying talent. Those who fail will be punished by the heavens, and they won't be able to improve their domain for the rest of their lives. Biluo said seriously. Even she had almost perished under the domain tribulation back then. In her heart, there was a shadow of the domain tribulation. Therefore, she had to be careful when telling Lin Yi about his domain. Is there a rough comparison between a saint and a domain? Or rather, what are the conditions for a saint to improve their domain? Lin Yi asked. When he asked Biluo about cultivation, he didn't miss a single word because what Biluo knew was far beyond his imagination. He couldn't help but feel lucky to have such a former to guide him. The main thing was that he didn't have a powerful master. Or rather, the master he had never met was too powerful. He was so powerful that he couldn't touch it now. Yes. Of course. After becoming a saint, domain is very important. You are a spiritual will saint, so you can't understand the requirements of a martial saint. You should know this when you are a 5th tribulation half-true saint. Oh right, when your spiritual will is strong enough, you will also have a spiritual will domain. Below the heavenly realm, there is only intent realm. The limit of a half-true saint's domain is 9,999. For a saint, the first level of domain is the limit. For a great sage, the second level of domain is the limit. For a heavenly saint, the third level of domain is the limit. But very few people reach the limit. Many saints don't even have 10,000 strands of domain. Domain is harder to cultivate than cultivation. How many half-true saints have you seen with 9,999 strands of domain? Of course, peerless geniuses are exceptions. The reason they are geniuses is because they are different. Biluo was like a strict teacher, telling Lin Yi everything she knew. She wasn't stingy at all. One had to know that this was related to Lin Ye's understanding of cultivation in the future. As long as there was no deep hatred between them, they generally wouldn't mislead others. Lin Yi was intoxicated as he listened. The more he listened, the more exciting it became. What is the percentage of saints who have reached the limit? Looking at Biluo, Lin Yi asked curiously. Because he and Silent Soul's domain had long surpassed the limit, and was infinitely close to the first level of domain. However, their cultivation was only at the half-true saint realm, and they had already surpassed the limit before the half-true saint realm. Reaching the limit is difficult. Out of 1 trillion people, there might not be one who has reached the limit of domain. You are an exception, and so is the holy maiden of the Heavenly Fox clan. Biluo said calmly. Time, she had plenty of time. Chapter 346. The first realm is the limit of the domain. How powerful will it be? Lin Yi asked. He knew that the stronger the domain, the more terrifying it would be. When one was in the celestial realm, 1 or 2 more domains would make a huge difference. Later on, the difference in the domain would seem insignificant. However, if the difference in the domain was too big, it would be a huge gap. The first realm limit will give one an intrinsic talent. When the domain of swords reaches 99999 Dao, it will evolve into a domain sword. In the domain of swords, the user will be invincible. Even great sages will have to flee at the mere sight of it. Intrinsic talent, also known as domain divine ability, is the talent of the domain itself. However, although the power is great, there are also limitations. Biluo said seriously. Most people only knew one type of domain. Even if they knew more than one type, they would choose one to cultivate because one type would consume a lifetime of energy. There was no more time and energy to cultivate other domains. Rather than cultivating several types, it was better to cultivate one type and cultivate it to the extreme. Lin Yi was an exception. Because he had dozens of times more time than others, and with the Sky Pagoda, he had hundreds of times more time than others. Also, he had the unique chaotic divine tree in the universe. Sword domain. Lin Yi muttered to himself. Now, he already had 2/3 of the divine sword constitution, and his sword Dao talent was invincible. Or, the sword was born for him. His sword domain had reached more than 90,000 Dao, and what he wanted the most was a sword Dao divine ability. From Biluo's words, Lin Yi roughly understood that if he succeeded in the first realm, he would have an intrinsic talent, which was a divine ability. Divine ability. That was the level of divine-level cultivation techniques and martial technique. Of course, even if he succeeded in the tribulation, only a portion of the heaven-defying geniuses would be able to obtain an intrinsic talent divine ability. Otherwise, as long as the powerhouses who succeeded in the tribulation had divine abilities, the world wouldn't be filled with divine abilities. If the sword domain broke through and didn't obtain a divine ability, he would choose the 5 elements domain, because he had the 5 elements domain and the sword domain. Next, Lin Yi took out the Sky Universe Pagoda, allowing the dark azure glaze to guard it. After that, he entered the Sky Universe Pagoda. Once he entered the 9 layers space, the time ratio instantly became terrifying. 16, 1 plus 32, 1. The time ratio was 512, 1. In other words, 512 days in the ninefold space was only one day in the outside world. Below the Chaos God Tree, Lin Yi sat cross-legged. He focused all his attention on the cultivation of the sword domain. Time passed day by day. Lin Yi's sword domain was also growing stronger day by day. The higher the level of a domain, the harder it was to cultivate and improve. Even under the primal chaos divine tree, he could only increase his domain by one domain per day. If this news were to spread, people would definitely be shocked. Finally, the sword domain reached 99999. When his domain of swords reached 99999 Dao, Lin Yi stopped cultivating. That was because his sword domain had already reached its limit. If he wanted to become stronger, he had to break through the shackles. However, breaking through the shackles was easier said than done. The key was to find a good opportunity to face the domain tribulation. After reaching the limit of his sword domain, he also asked Biluo. Biluo told him to choose to face the domain tribulation during the Great Xia War because the four races would invade the human race. During the peak war, tens of millions of experts would gather. With the help of the fighting spirit of these experts, he was more confident of breaking through the sword domain. Hearing Biluo's words, Lin Yi stopped cultivating the sword domain and began cultivating the five elements domain. He didn't know how many years had passed in the ninefold space. On this day, when his water domain reached its limit of 99,999, he received a message from the dark azure glaze saying that someone was looking for him. Without hesitation, he stopped cultivating. After leaving the ninefold space, he walked out of the Sky Universe Pagoda and returned to his room. How long has it been? Lin Yi glanced at the palm-sized green grass on the coffee table in the room and asked. 5 months have passed. The war between the four races and the human race has reached its climax. The guardian of the sacred palace summons you. The palm-sized green grass on the coffee table was not an ordinary grass, but one of the most magical life forms in the universe, the dark azure glaze. If he treated it as an ordinary grass, he wouldn't even know how he died. Go and cultivate. Lin Yi nodded. With a thought, he sent the dark azure glaze into the ninefold space. After doing all this, he walked out of the palace. The sacred palace was the holy land of the Great Xia Holy City. Those who could appear here were the most powerful figures in the Great Xia Holy City. The war between the human race and the four races made the atmosphere in the Holy City extremely oppressive. Even injured human experts could be seen from time to time. This time, the Great Xia Holy City is in danger. It is said that even the demon venerables of the demon race have come, and there are millions of demon race experts and legions. The demon race is the most terrifying. Yes, the demon race is the most terrifying. The most terrifying ones are the blood race and the demons, because the 10 blood kings and the blood emperor of the blood race are here. The 10 demon emperors and the demon master of the demon race are also here. The blood kings are all existences. The demon emperors are also pinnacle saints. The guardians of the Great Xia Holy City won't be dispatched. We can only rely on the experts and legions of the Great Xia Holy City. It will be difficult to resist the armies and experts of the four races, and there are countless experts of the foreign races. Along the way, there were discussions about the war between the four races and the human race. The four races were too powerful. Even the demon venerables, who had never appeared, had appeared, as well as the demon master and the blood emperor. Although there were experts in the Great Xia Holy City who were comparable to the blood kings and demon emperors, compared to the blood emperor and the demon master, the difference was huge. Facing the armies and experts of the four races, the human race could only be beaten. What will come will come. The demon venerables, the demon master, and the blood emperor. Lin Yi muttered to himself. He walked towards the guardians of the sacred palace. He didn't know how powerful the demon venerables were, but he had seen how terrifying the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master were. At that time, the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master had just been born, and their cultivation strength had long been lost. After recovering for a while, they must have been terrifyingly powerful. A few months ago, the Blood Emperor was born. He fought with the Blood Emperor. At that time, the Blood Emperor's strength was comparable to a later stage saint. Now, he should have recovered to the level of a pinnacle saint, or even an invincible saint. If he was only a saint, the Great Xia Holy City still had a chance to defeat the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master. If the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master had recovered to the level of the Great Sage, it would be terrifying. He was sure that the wordless heavenly book was in the hands of the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master. If he could defeat and kill the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master, he would be able to get the wordless heavenly book. However, it was almost impossible to snatch the wordless heavenly book from the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master. In an instant, Lin Yi felt both excited and hopeless. He was excited because the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master had arrived, and so had the wordless heavenly book. Chapter 347. Greetings, Lord Guardian. Lin Yi came to the place where the guardian of the sacred palace was and bowed when he saw the guardian. This is the last time. This is the last time we will meet. I will tell you everything you want to know. If you have anything you want to ask, you can ask first. The guardian opened his slightly closed eyes and looked at Lin Yi. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the starry sky. As a divine will sage, he couldn't help but feel a trace of fear. This was the strength of a super expert. Senior, you said last time that it was destined. What is destined? Lin Yi asked. A few months ago, the guardian said this to him. He had been curious and puzzled, not knowing what the guardian meant. Now, the guardian said that he could tell him anything he wanted to know. Although he didn't know what was going on, he naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity to clear his doubts. You have already obtained 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book. A glimmer of light flashed across the guardian's eyes. He drew a line with one hand. Suddenly, a mysterious restriction shrouded Lin Yi and him. Lin Yi knew that this was a mysterious and simple soundproof restriction. Even a divine will sage couldn't eavesdrop on the conversation inside the restriction. Seeing the guardian so cautious, Lin Yi was even more curious. Yes, I have obtained 6 pages. Lin Yi nodded and answered. In the world of the Great Xia, the guardian was the ruler. He could definitely find out what he wanted to know. He didn't know how the guardian knew, but he didn't intend to hide it from the guardian. The 4 words of the wordless heavenly book can't be spoken by the creatures in the world of the Great Xia. These 4 words are taboo. They can't be spoken at all. Those who say these 4 words will vanish into thin air. The guardian didn't directly answer Lin Yi's doubts. Lin Yi wasn't in a hurry. He knew that what the guardian said must be related to what he wanted to know. He became more and more curious because he knew that he was getting closer and closer to the secrets of the world of the Great Xia. Senior, why can you say these 4 words? This is the reason why Senior and Junior met for the last time. Lin Yi looked at the guardian and asked. He really didn't expect the wordless heavenly book to be a taboo in the world of the Grand Xia. Not only did no one dare to mention it, they couldn't even say it out loud. But how could this protector say it out loud? I am a guardian. It's one of the 3,000 world spirits of the Grand Xia. It is also one of the consciousnesses of the former sovereign of the Grand Xia. My every word and action represents the world of the Grand Xia. I represent the previous ruler of the world of the Grand Xia. When you know that Theta Scarabii has been cut off, my mission will come to an end, so I will disappear. The guardian's tone was extremely calm. In other words, his state of mind was as calm as an ancient well. This was because he wasn't a real person in the first place. He was the spirit of the world, one of the consciousnesses of the previous ruler of the Great Xia. Naturally, he didn't feel anything when the world disappeared. I see. The ruler of the Grand Xia is still here? Lin Yi suddenly realized. But there was another problem. Since it was the consciousness of the previous ruler of the Grand Xia, could it be that the previous ruler of the Grand Xia was still alive? If he wasn't dead, how powerful was the previous ruler of the Grand Xia? He's no longer here. He was cut off from the Grand Xia in the river of time tens of millions of years ago. I said last time that it was destined. That was because you got the wordless heavenly book. Also, the appearance of the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor was also destined. When the human who has the wordless heavenly book appears, the Blood Emperor, the Demon Lord, and the Demon Lord will appear. The guardian shook his head. A look of vicissitudes flashed across his face. After tens of millions of years, even if it was just a consciousness, there would be a trace of emotion. Moreover, he was a consciousness of the previous ruler of the Grand Xia. Is there a way to snatch the wordless heavenly book back from the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel excited. If this was destined, it meant that the wordless heavenly book had been collected. The 3 pages of the wordless heavenly book of the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord would also be in his hands. It depends on your ability. The guardian can't leave the city. If the 9 pages of the wordless heavenly book can't be merged, the Grand Xia will return to the beginning again. Everything that happened was just an illusion, and a part of everyone's memory in the Grand Xia will be erased. 4 millions of years it has been like this, the guardian said calmly. When Lin Yi heard this, he was shocked to the core. He was even more disappointed. Originally, he thought that the Grand Xia sacred city would snatch the wordless heavenly book from the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord for him. In actual fact, he had thought too much. Things weren't as he had imagined. The army and experts of the Grand Xia sacred city. Will there be a war with the 4 tribes? Lin Yi was speechless. His 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book were wasted, and he had wasted his time. It was impossible for him to face the Blood Emperor, the Demon Lord, and the Demon Lord. Not to mention the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor. The Demon Lord alone could kill him with one hand. It was undoubtedly a fool's dream to snatch the wordless heavenly book from the 3 of them. Moreover, the army and experts of the 4 tribes had gathered. On the surface, their purpose was to invade the Grand Xia world and become the ruler of the Grand Xia world. However, only the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord knew the real purpose. That was to snatch the wordless heavenly book. However, if the guardian didn't leave the city, the Grand Xia sacred city still had other armies and experts. Of course. However, the experts and armies of the Grand Xia sacred city could wipe out any tribe in the Grand Xia world. Now that the 4 tribes have formed an alliance, the Grand Xia sacred city is no match for the 4 tribes. I just don't know what kind of deal the 4 tribes have for them to form an alliance. The guardian said. The armies and experts of the Grand Xia sacred city were indeed powerful. However, the Grand Xia sacred city was no match for the 4 tribes. Can I wait for a month and leave the Grand Xia world directly? Lin Yi looked at the guardian and asked. Fight. He couldn't win against the Blood Emperor, the Demon Lord, and the Demon Lord. The only way was to wait for a month and leave the Grand Xia world. The Demon Lord and the others couldn't possibly follow him to the Tianyang Empire. Moreover, the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor didn't know that the wordless heavenly book was with him. All right. However, you will face the experts and armies of the 4 tribes. Pass through them and head to the spacetime teleportation gate. All the foreign humans who enter the Grand Xia world will do the same as you. Pass through the armies and experts of the 4 tribes and head to the spacetime teleportation gate. Only the blood of the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord can open the spacetime teleportation gate in the Grand Xia sacred city. The guardian said with a smile. The armies and experts of the 4 tribes were gathered outside the Grand Xia sacred city. There were also the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord. Passing through them to the spacetime teleportation gate was undoubtedly courting death. Chapter 348. Isn't this courting death? Lin Yi listened to the Guardian's words. Choosing to fight meant death. Choosing to wait or die. Either way, it was death. This made Lin Yi speechless. It could also be said that he could only face the Blood Emperor, the Demon Lord, and the Demon Venerable now. If he couldn't defeat them, then the monstrous experts from the Heavenly Purification Territory would have to stay in the Great Xiao world. If he could defeat the Demon Lord and the others, they would be able to return to the Heavenly Purification Territory from the Great Xiao world. Opportunity and death are directly proportional. As long as you get the wordless Heavenly Book in the hands of the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Venerable, the 4 clans of the Great Xiao world are silent. If you can integrate the complete wordless Heavenly Book, the entire Great Xiao world will be reborn. You will obtain endless wealth and resources. I have told you everything I wanted to tell you. The decision is up to you. Everything has its own destiny. The Guardian finished speaking. His figure gradually faded and finally turned into nothingness. He completely disappeared from Lin Yi's sight. Seeing the Guardian disappear, Lin Yi was shocked to the extreme. It made him freeze on the spot. At the same time, it also confirmed the Guardian's words. He was a world spirit of the Great Xiao world, just a consciousness of the previous ruler of the Great Xiao world. His mission was completed and he would naturally disappear. There's only one battle left. After a long time, Lin Yi slowly woke up from his shock. There was still a month before they left the Great Xiao world ruins. If they didn't leave after the time limit, they would stay here forever. Staying here meant death. After walking out of the sacred palace, Lin Yi was still in deep thought. Because there were still many questions that he hadn't answered yet. But now, the Guardian had completed his mission and disappeared. It probably wouldn't work to find the other Guardians. Little junior brother. The familiar voice pulled Lin Yi back to reality from his thoughts. He didn't need to look to know who it was. In the entire Great Xiao world, and even in the Heavenly Purification Territory, there was only one person who called him little junior brother, and that was Nangong Xie. Senior sister. Lin Yi raised his head and looked at Nangong Xie. Nangong Xie was still so beautiful and peerless, like the goddess of the 9 heavens, Di Chen. What's wrong? What's wrong? Seeing Lin Yi's expression, Nangong Xie was curious. In her impression, this little junior brother of hers was extremely heaven-defying, and there was nothing that could stump him. However, looking at the expression on his face, it was clear that he had encountered a difficult problem. Moreover, it was very important. Otherwise, it would not have affected his state of mind. For a moment, his curiosity was piqued. I have indeed encountered a difficult situation. Not just me, but everyone who entered the ruins of the Grand Xia. Lin Yi's expression was grave. He said seriously. He understood in his heart that if he hadn't obtained the wordless Heavenly Book, perhaps so many things wouldn't have happened in the world of the Grand Xia. The humans and the experts of the 8 foreign races who entered the Heavenly Purification Territory wouldn't have suffered such a calamity. Teet. Back when he and the Victory Squad were hunting demonic beasts, Lai Tianyu appeared with serious injuries and found the altar in the depths of the dark forest. It was because of this altar that he obtained the first page of the wordless Heavenly Book. It was as if all of this had been predestined. Little junior brother, what news did you get? Let me know. Nangong Xie was shocked when she heard Lin Yi's words. A solemn expression appeared on her beautiful face. Her talent was not higher than Lin Yi's. Even if she had the benefits brought by her original body, she could not compare to her little junior brother. Something that even her little junior brother found troublesome was definitely not simple. Moreover, she knew that Lin Yi was not the kind of person who would speak without thinking. Senior sister, this is a secret. I really can't tell you. But I can be sure that if the Demon Lord, Blood Emperor, and Demon Venerable don't die, we won't be able to leave the Great Xiao World ruins and will stay here forever. Of course, there is another way, and that is to leave the Great Xiao Holy City and find a space-time teleportation gate somewhere else. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and said, he naturally would not tell her the secrets of the wordless heavenly book. At least, he could not tell her now. He could not tell her the secrets of the wordless heavenly book and the Great Xiao World, but he could tell her some things about leaving the Great Xiao World. After saying that, he looked at Nangong Xie. Standing in front of this senior sister, he felt his heart beat faster. It was because Nangong Xie was too beautiful and had an otherworldly temperament. How could this be? I met the Demon Venerable once and was heavily injured in one move. The Demon Venerable, the Demon Lord, and the Blood Emperor should be on par. If such powerful existences could be killed, the experts of the Great Xiao World would have killed them long ago. Relying on us to kill the Blood Emperor, the Demon Lord, and the Demon Venerable is undoubtedly a fantasy. Nangong Xie listened to Lin Ye's words and her expression became even more serious. This was also the first time Lin Yi saw his senior sister so serious. This was natural. The four races were powerful. Not to mention Nangong Xie, even the human experts of the Great Xiao World could not deal with them. Now that it concerned their life and death, it would be too fake if her state of mind was still calm. Moreover, when she first came to the Great Xia Holy City, she met the Demon Venerable once and was heavily injured in one move. If it wasn't for the means left behind by her original body, she would have been killed by the Demon Venerable. Thinking about it now, she still had lingering fear. We can only fight. Now, the main problem is that the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Venerable are all together. If we can separate them, there might be some hope, but the hope is too slim. There is still more than a month before the Great Xiao World ruins closes. If we can't deal with the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Venerable within a month, we will really have to stay here forever. Lin Yi and Nangong Xie walked, while talking about the situation of the Great Xiao World. A month was too short. If there was no time constraint, with their talent, it was not impossible to kill the Blood Emperor after cultivating to a powerful level. I got the news from the Ao family of the Great Xia Holy City. The experts of the Great Xiao World are unable to kill the Demon Venerable. It is because of the rules. However, the Demon Venerable is also unable to kill the strongest experts of the Great Xiao World. I think it is the same for the Demon Lord and the Blood Emperor. If the experts of the Great Xiao World pin down the Blood Emperor and the others, will we be able to defeat them one by one? Nangong Xie's beautiful face revealed a trace of a smile. The Ao family, one of the top 10 families of the Great Xiao World, had existed since ancient times. The Ao family knew countless secrets. Chapter 349. There are indeed such experts in the Great Xiao World. They can restrain the Blood Emperor, Demon Lord, and Demon Venerables. Senior sister, are you preparing to go somewhere? Lin Yi glanced at Nangong Xie. Other than Goddess Yun Luo, no one in the Great Xia Holy City could compare to Nangong Xie's appearance and temperament. Ao Shinfeng was one of the 10 emperors of the Great Xia Holy City. After seeing Nangong Xie, he was also stunned. It was reasonable for him to want to pursue Nangong Xie. Therefore, it was not impossible for Nangong Xie to obtain some secrets of the Great Xiao World from the Ao family. I'm here to find you. I knew you were here, so I came here to wait for you, Nangong Xie said. They had been training in the Great Xiao World ruins for 3 years and were about to leave. However, the people of the Nangong family wanted Nangong Xie to bring Lin Yi to the Nangong family. No matter what, she was a member of the Nangong family and had to give an explanation. Therefore, she came to find Lin Yi to see what Lin Ye's attitude was. Looking for me? The matter of Nangong Qinyu. Understood. Senior sister, what do you plan to do? Lin Yi was stunned when he heard that Nangong Xie had come to find him. Then, he realized that it should be about Nangong Qianyu. He looked at Nangong Xie and asked. His expression was calm and there was a faint smile on his face. He did not take this matter to heart at all. The Nangong family of the Tianjin Empire was indeed powerful. However, Lin Yi was not afraid of the Nangong family. He had just killed Nangong Qianyu. He had killed Nangong Qianyu. This was a world where the strong were respected. Could it be that he had to go to the family to apologize and accept punishment after killing someone? That would not be a joke. I have no plans. Besides, it's still unknown whether we can leave the Great Xia World ruins. We'll talk about it when we really leave and return to the heavenly purification territory. However, I still suggest that you make a trip to the Nangong family. Nangong Xie smiled. This smile was devastatingly beautiful. She knew Lin Ye's character. It was impossible for him to lower his head. Moreover, if someone was killed in the Grand Xia World ruins, no one outside could take revenge. The Nangong family knew that Nangong Qianyu was killed by Lin Yi, but they wanted Nangong Xie to bring Lin Yi back to the Nangong family. That didn't make sense. Even if he killed Nangong Qianyu in the Nangong family, there was no need for Lin Yi to go to the Nangong family, let alone in the Great Xia World ruins. If he went, he would undoubtedly be courting death. Tell me the reason. Lin Yi looked seriously at Nangong Xie. He wanted to know the reason. Nangong Xie was a member of the Nangong family. The Nangong family had her bring him to the Nangong family. Now, Nangong Xie wanted him to go to the Nangong family. There had to be a reason. This was also a way to see Nangong Xie's attitude. Actually, he knew. The two of them were merely fellow disciples of the Heavenly Sea sect. Speaking of which, the two of them had only met once in the sect. If Nangong Xie brought him to the Nangong family from the perspective of the Nangong family, he would have nothing to say. He could also empathize with Nangong Xie. After all, Nangong Xie was a member of the Nangong family. It's because of your senior sister. It has nothing to do with the Nangong family. If there comes a day when the Nangong family wants to deal with you, your senior sister will not stand on the side of the Nangong family. Even if there is a chance, I will stand on the side of the Nangong family. How about it? Nangong Xie's beautiful face carried a faint smile. Her beautiful eyes looked at Lin Yi. That pure and holy temperament made Lin Yi unable to have any obscene thoughts. It can't be because we are fellow disciples, right? Lin Yi was startled. He really didn't expect Nangong Xie to have such an attitude. He really couldn't understand why Nangong Xie would be like this. It was simply impossible for it to be just because they were fellow disciples. After all, the two of them had only met once in the Heavenly Sea sect. Even if they were fellow disciples with a good relationship, they would still become enemies in such a situation. It's just because we are fellow disciples. Nangong Xie's words made Lin Yi surprised. He even somewhat didn't believe it. However, Lin Yi couldn't think of any other reason. It was mainly because Nangong Xie was too beautiful, too peerless and otherworldly. Although the Nangong family was powerful, Nangong Xie gave him the feeling that Nangong Xie was above the family. The Nangong family didn't have the qualifications to control Nangong Xie. She was like a goddess from the 9 heavens. Let's go to the battlefield and take a look. We'll talk about the future later. Lin Ye's gaze moved away from Nangong Xie. He said. After saying that, he walked forward. If it wasn't for his talent and strength, he would be too ordinary. If someone who didn't know him saw him, they would only think of him as an ordinary mortal, or a disciple of an aristocratic family, or even a scholar. Standing in front of Nangong Xie, the two of them were worlds apart. Only his mental state and talent and strength allowed him to look down on everything. If he was really treated as an ordinary mortal, he wouldn't even know how he died. He didn't know the reason. Nangong Xie gave him a feeling that made him want to stay away from her. This was instinctive. It was also subconscious. It was innate. He couldn't help but think of his previous life. In his previous life, he was unparalleled in the world, but he was schemed against by his beloved. Seeing Nangong Xie, he didn't know why he had such a feeling. Nangong Xie naturally also felt the change in Lin Ye's mental state. She didn't know why her junior brother wanted to distance himself from her. All the men in the world went crazy when they saw her. Only this seemingly ordinary junior brother in front of her was different. There were many things about him that she wanted to know, but she didn't know it all. Looking at Lin Ye's back, Nangong Xie was startled. Then her figure flashed strangely. When she reappeared, she was already walking side by side with Lin Yi, heading towards the battlefield outside the sacred city of Grand Xia. Along the way, the two didn't speak again. The atmosphere was incomparably strange. Rumble, rumble. 2 hours later, the two arrived at the edge of the sacred city of Grand Xia. At this moment, the entire sacred city of Grand Xia was covered by a faint screen of light. This screen of light looked incomparably weak, but it was actually extremely sturdy. It was a defensive divine formation passed down from the ancient era. As long as the sacred city wasn't destroyed, the divine formation wouldn't be destroyed. Outside the sacred city, the densely packed experts and armies of the four races were like a boundless ocean. A world-destroying aura soared into the sky, twisting space apart. Demonic aura blood aura. It made this world seem like a demonic realm. Only the sacred city of Grand Xia stood as steady as a boulder. Countless legions and armies of the four races were fighting against the human armies and experts. Nearly 20 million legions and experts of the four races stretched for 1,000,000 miles, sealing off the area within 1,000,000 miles of the sacred city of Grand Xia. The fierce battle continued without end. It was never-ending. Lin Yi had also experienced several great battles, but compared to the battle before him, the difference was more than a level. The two were on completely different levels. Although the four races were in an alliance, they were in 4 different camps. However, there were 4 camps that surrounded the Great Xia Holy City from the front, back, left and right. Chapter 350. Captain Fairy Xia. At the edge of the Grand Xia Holy City, there were countless human experts and legions. Lai Tenyu and the others had finished cultivating and came here. When they saw Lin Yi and Nangong Xie, they greeted them. "How do you feel?" Lin Yi looked at Sun Wuyu and the others and asked. All of them were 3rd or 4th tribulation half-true saints, and they were far from ordinary people. However, in the face of such a great battle, even true saints couldn't guarantee their lives. Not to mention half-true saints. "Captain, this place is too powerful. However, it's a real place to train," Sun Wuyu said excitedly. He naturally didn't know that they might never be able to leave the Grand Xia Holy City. As the saying goes, ignorance is bliss. If they knew that they might have to stay here, what kind of expression would they have? Rumble, rumble. Explosions sounded in the void. Space shattered continuously, and strong winds wreaked havoc. Countless human legions and experts looked at the void, but the void was blocked by powerful true saints. They couldn't see the situation above, and they didn't know who was fighting above. Gotcha! Right at this moment, a huge crack appeared in the void. From the crack, a figure fell out. The figure landed on the ground. It was an old man in green robes with a white beard. This old man's cultivation was terrifying, and countless true saints couldn't see through his cultivation. However, such a terrifying figure was struck down from the sky with serious injuries. His body was dripping with blood. There were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he was heavily injured. Heavenly Snow Saint. Even the Heavenly Snow Saint is heavily injured. The Heavenly Snow Saint is an invincible true saint. 4 invincible true saints aren't a match for the Blood Emperor. How strong is the Blood Emperor? I don't dare to imagine. If the Blood Emperor is so terrifying, then the Demon Venerable and Devil Lord are definitely not simple. In the sky, 4 invincible true saints are fighting the Blood Emperor. Every day, the Devil Lord, Blood Race, and Demonic Race would send out a terrifying expert to kill the human legions and experts. The human experts can only fight back. Otherwise, their legions and experts would suffer heavy losses. This is the first time I've seen the Blood Emperor in action. I wonder how strong the Demon Master and the Demon Master are. In the Great Xia Sacred City, countless experts were shocked when they saw the severely injured Heavenly Snow Saint falling from the sky. One had to know that the Heavenly Snow Saint was definitely one of the top experts in the holy city of Grand Xia. He had already reached the level of Invincible Saint. One more step and he would be the Great Sage. Even when 4 Invincible Saints joined forces, they were still no match for the Blood Emperor. How strong was the Blood Emperor? Just thinking about it was terrifying. Boom! Boom! Crack! In less than 10 breaths of time after the Heavenly Snow Saint fell, he was severely injured. The other 3 Invincible Saints also fell from the void. Their bodies were covered with wounds and looked terrible. Their auras were extremely weak, as if they were not far from death. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, he forcefully stopped himself. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The 4 Invincible Saints looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Invincible Saints were definitely the top existences in the Great Xia Sacred City. If it was in the past, they would be elusive figures. Now that the 4 of them had joined forces to fight the Blood Emperor, they were severely injured by the Blood Emperor. They did not even manage to touch the Blood Emperor's clothes, let alone kill the Blood Emperor. Lowly humans! You've overestimated yourselves. In the void, an unparalleled crimson light descended. The crimson light was like a boundless river of blood. In the crimson light, a middle-aged man stood. The middle-aged man exuded an unparalleled crimson aura. His eyes were like lightning. Wherever he passed, the space would tremble. He was like a heavenly emperor who ruled over the world. He looked around at the human army and experts. His lips curled into a disdainful smile. When his gaze landed on Lin Yi, he stopped. Unparalleled Saint aura swept toward Lin Yi in an overwhelming manner. Boom! The space trembled. The Saint aura was blocked by the Great Xia Sacred City's defense divine array. Suddenly, the space within a 100-mile radius shattered. Although there was a defense divine array in between, Lin Yi could still feel the Blood Emperor's terror and murderous intent. Facing the Blood Emperor, he felt immense pressure. It was as though a mountain was pressing down on him. Come out! The Blood Emperor looked at Lin Yi with his crimson eyes and shouted faintly. His voice was like a clap of thunder. The space was pierced through and shattered into pieces. Countless human army and experts vanished into thin air under his voice. Even saints couldn't withstand his voice. Their faces turned pale. In an instant, countless gazes looked at Lin Yi. This Blood Emperor is really vengeful. Didn't I injure him severely the last time? When the Blood Emperor looked at him, Lin Yi knew that the Blood Emperor recognized him. The last time, he had injured the Blood Emperor severely. The Blood Emperor definitely wouldn't forget about it. It was the humiliation of his life. Captain, don't go. Junior, bear with it. Sun Wuyu and the others, as well as Nangong Xie, looked at Lin Yi. They were worried that Lin Yi would be provoked by the Blood Emperor. With Lin Ye's current cultivation, he definitely wasn't the Blood Emperor's match. He would be courting death if he went out. I'll go and take a look. Even if I can't defeat him, I can still escape. Lin Yi smiled. Then, he took a step out and left the Great Xia Holy City. When he reappeared, he was already standing outside the defense formation of the Great Xia Holy City. He was only a few miles away from the Blood Emperor. Such a distance was very far for an ordinary person. However, to experts above the saint level, it was just a simple teleportation. They didn't even need to move. A powerful martial arts skill could kill an expert from a distance. This is ridiculous. The last time the Blood Emperor was born, he hadn't recovered his cultivation and power. Hence, he was severely injured by Lin Yi. Now that he met Lin Yi, he naturally wouldn't let Lin Yi go. If Lin Yi were to go out now, he would be killed instantly. The Blood Emperor is too strong. Let alone Lin Yi, who is only a half-sage, even an invincible saint would die. It's a pity that he is too impulsive. If he were to be given a few more decades, he might be the Blood Emperor's match. Isn't he courting death? Sigh, he is too young. When the army and experts of the Great Xia Holy City saw that Lin Yi had left the protection of the defense formation and went against the Blood Emperor, they sighed. They thought that Lin Yi was too impulsive and ignorant. The Blood Emperor was the Blood Emperor who had just been born a few months ago. In the center of the Great Xia Holy City, they were able to see the situation of the battle through the crystal screen. The experts inside naturally saw that Lin Yi was going against the Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor, you shouldn't have come out. Lin Yi was floating in the air. He activated the Divine Dragon 9 transformations and activated the Supreme Sacred Armor. He activated the Absolute Defense and could block the Blood Emperor's attack anytime. Before the Blood Emperor, he didn't dare to be careless. Chapter 351. You provoked me the last time before I recovered. The price you have to pay is beyond your imagination. The Blood Emperor floated in the boundless blood light. The blood light was like a sea of blood, covering a radius of 10 miles. The Blood Emperor was 1,000 times stronger than when he had just been born. He was like the ruler of this starry sky. When he saw Lin Yi, a bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face. He looked down at Lin Yi with an aura of disdain for the world. In his eyes, Lin Yi was just a slightly bigger ant that couldn't withstand a single blow. Do you think that you can kill me now? After meeting me, you won't end up being sealed or suppressed. You will vanish. There will be no more words about you in the history of this world. Lin Yi walked towards the Blood Emperor. He was just a fifth tribulation half-true saint. However, his aura and state of mind were like that of an invincible saint. He was even on the same level as the Blood Emperor. This scene shocked and excited all the human powerhouses. It didn't matter if Lin Yi could withstand a single blow from the Blood Emperor. However, his aura and state of mind made countless experts in the Great Xia Holy City feel inferior. Blood Sea. The killing intent in the Blood Emperor's eyes intensified. He saw a shadow in Lin Yi. It was a person who had left a shadow in his heart. As the Blood Emperor, he didn't want to waste his breath on a human junior. With a wave of his hand, an earth-shattering destructive power flooded the space. Instantly, the space was drowned in a sea of blood. Countless human experts and armies turned into skeletons at this moment. The blood race experts were sinister and vicious. Their methods were terrifying, vicious, and inhumane. Great Sage, early stage. Lin Yi felt the terror of the Blood Emperor. He was shocked. At the same time, he guessed that the Blood Emperor's cultivation had recovered to the early stage of the Great Sage. Even if he was at the early stage of the Great Sage, he could kill an invincible saint instantly. This was the terrifying part of the Great Sage. After reaching the Saint Realm, there were 5 minor realms. They were the early stage, the middle stage, the late stage, the peak stage, and the invincible realm. It was said that there were those above the invincible realm who defied the natural order, but there were too few such experts, because almost all the saints broke the shackles when they reached the invincible realm. Humans did not have much lifespan to begin with, and cultivation consumed a terrifying amount of time. There was no more time for humans to waste. It was already a blessing to be able to break through the shackles in one's lifetime. Wanting to find a heaven-defying realm was too far-fetched. In fact, generally speaking, saints in the later stages would be looking for ways and opportunities to break through the shackles and reach higher realms. They would not have the time or opportunity to search for the peak and invincibility, let alone defy the heavens. Among the 10,000 saints, those who had reached the late stage were prepared to break through the shackles. Out of 1,000,000 saints, only one would reach the invincible realm. Perhaps there would be a heaven-defying saint among the billions of saints. Of the 5 small realms, 99% of the saints had only experienced the first 3 small realms. Only heaven-defying geniuses or saints who knew they couldn't break through the shackles would strive for the peak and invincible. Only those geniuses who hadn't appeared in 10,000 years would strive for the heaven-defying saints. You know quite a lot. The Blood Emperor looked at Lin Yi with bloodthirsty eyes. His tone was extremely cold. At that very moment, the unparalleled Blood Sea had already crushed in front of Lin Yi. As long as he was drowned by the Blood Sea, even if Lin Yi was the great sage, he would be turned into a skeleton by the Blood Sea and disappear from this world. There would be no more Lin Yi. Azura hell. Eternity death. Just as Lin Yi was about to be drowned by the Blood Sea, Lin Ye's expression was calm as he waved one hand. Suddenly, the entire world became dark. Everything trembled, and within a radius of 10 miles, it was like purgatory on Earth. The destructive attack covered the sky and the earth as it crushed toward the Blood Sea. Supreme-grade Saint Stage martial skill. This was one of Lin Ye's most powerful martial skills. It was also a group attack, the only group attack. Rumble! Rumble! The Blood Sea clashed with Lin Ye's Azura Hell. Suddenly, the space collapsed and there was a raging wind. There were continuous explosions and countless troops and experts from the 4 clans vanished into thin air. Many human troops and experts were also destroyed in the shockwave. When the gods fought, the mortals suffered. The shockwave from the battle between Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor was destructive. Even a sage would be severely injured or vanish into thin air if they were hit by the shockwave. Retreat! Retreat! The human commander shouted loudly. The commanders from the Blood Clan, Demon Clan, and Demons ordered their experts and troops to retreat. If they didn't retreat, they would only die. No one was willing to be destroyed by the shockwave. In an instant, there was no one within 100 miles of Great Xia Holy City. There was only Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor. Lin Ye's body shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was thrown back like a kite with a short string. The Blood Emperor's attack was destructive. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he couldn't shake the Blood Emperor's Blood Sea. In just one exchange, Lin Yi was severely injured. His chest felt like it was hit by 100,000 mountains. Fortunately, he had the supreme sacred armor, absolute defense, and divine Dragon 9 transformations. His defense and physique were comparable to a sage. Even so, he was still severely injured by the Blood Emperor's attack. He didn't dare to imagine that if he didn't have the supreme sacred armor, absolute defense, and divine Dragon 9 transformations, the Blood Emperor's attack would have made him vanish into thin air. The Blood Emperor was too terrifying. After flying for 10 miles, Lin Yi finally stabilized his body. He covered his chest with one hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The Azura Hell's power disappeared. The Blood Sea also disappeared. Lin Yi was crushed by this attack. What a powerful Blood Emperor! If it were any other sage, they would definitely vanish into thin air. The truly terrifying one is Lin Yi. Indeed, it's a miracle that a 5th tribulation half-true saint could survive after fighting with a great sage. If it were you or me, we would have been smashed into pieces. The difference between Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor's cultivation is like heaven and earth. The Blood Emperor is a great sage. If the Blood Emperor's cultivation was the same as Lin Yi's, he would definitely be crushed into pieces. It's a pity. If Lin Yi was given another 100 years, the Blood Emperor would have to act like a grandson in front of him. I wonder how many attacks Lin Yi can take from the Blood Emperor. The first exchange between Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor. The entire human army and experts were shocked. They had never imagined that Lin Yi could survive the Blood Emperor's attack. Although he was injured, it was already a miracle. After all, Lin Yi was just a 5th tribulation half-true saint, while the Blood Emperor had already recovered to the early great sage. The difference between the two of them was more than heaven and earth. However, Lin Yi survived the battle with the Blood Emperor. His strength was truly terrifying. Everyone wanted to know Lin Yi's true strength. Some even thought that his strength had already reached the level of an invincible saint. After all, the 4 invincible saints had been heavily injured by the Blood Emperor. The extent of their injuries was more serious than Lin Yi's. Chapter 352. Countless human armies and powerhouses cheered for Lin Yi's monstrous talent. But at the same time, they were worried for Lin Yi because Lin Yi's cultivation was too low. Compared to Blood Emperor, he was like a baby who had just learned how to walk. How could he not be killed by Blood Emperor? If Lin Yi was given time, they believed that Lin Yi could defeat or even kill Blood Emperor one day. They understood. There were no ifs in this world. Is this the early stage of the Great Sage? Lin Yi revolved his technique and the pain in his chest disappeared. His aura soared. He was at his wits' end when facing Blood Emperor. The only way was to anger Blood Emperor. Then, he would have a chance to find Blood Emperor's weakness. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he wouldn't be Blood Emperor's match. Die. Blood Emperor creased his eyebrows. At his level of cultivation, he wouldn't be angered easily. But he couldn't help but be angry when he met Lin Yi. After all, he had been severely injured by Lin Yi when he had just been born. So, he had regarded it as a great humiliation. It was indeed a great humiliation. A dignified Blood Emperor had been forced to flee by a junior of the semi-sage realm. With a wave of his hand, the void broke. A huge crimson handprint pressed down on Lin Yi. The crimson handprint carried unparalleled sage might. Especially the handprint's realm, it almost destroyed the entire space. Lin Yi, whose aura was locked, was at the center of the destruction. 5 Elements realm. Feeling that he was about to be imprisoned by the handprint's realm, Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't dare to hold back and his 5 Elements realm burst out at that moment. 5 Elements realm, the 5 elements had exceeded 90,000 Dao paths. Even the Gold realm, Wood realm and Water realm had reached 99,999 Dao paths. The 5 elements merged and formed the 5 Elements realm. Its power was unparalleled. But because it was too powerful, Lin Yi hadn't displayed it. Then, he could only display it. Otherwise, he would be crushed by Blood Emperor's realm. By then, he wouldn't even have the chance to regret. Rumble. Rumble suddenly, a 5-colored domain enveloped Lin Yi. Within a radius of 10,000 meters, Lin Yi's 5-colored domain was everywhere. At this moment, Lin Yi was like the ruler of this world. He shone brightly and was extremely dazzling. Heavenly Emperor Fist. After the 5 Elements domain was activated, Lin Yi punched out. The domain had raised his strength to the extreme. Every move he made had the power to destroy the world. When he used the 6th level of the Celestial Emperor Fist, everything in the world paled in comparison. He was like a celestial emperor who had descended. Boom! Boom! A blood-red handprint. Heavenly Emperor Fist. The 2 peerless attacks collided fiercely. The fist radiance of the Celestial Emperor Fist shattered. The power of the blood-red handprint heavily bombarded Lin Yi's 5 Elements domain. Immediately after, the blood-red handprint passed through the 5 Elements domain and crushed Lin Yi's body. The Supreme Saint armor exploded with a terrifying defense and blocked the blood-red palm print. With the physique of the Divine Dragon 9 transformations, coupled with the absolute defense, Lin Yi's figure only swayed slightly. The 5 Elements domain shattered the remaining power of the blood-red handprint. Metal domain. Wood domain. Water domain. Fire domain. Earth domain. The 5 domains have actually fused together to form the 5 Elements domain. Moreover, it has reached more than 90,000. This is too heaven-defying. He actually controlled the 5 Elements domain. 3 of his domains have reached the limit. Oh my God! Each of our domains only has more than 2,000, but his domain has actually reached such a level. No one below the Saint realm can shake him in the slightest. Even if he stands still, we can't touch him. His domain is too terrifying. Sigh. No wonder he has the guts to fight with the Blood Emperor. It turns out that he is so terrifying. The human powerhouses. Seeing Lin Ye's 5 elements domain, they were stunned for a moment. They were stunned. What kind of existence was the 5 elements domain? A single domain was the most ordinary existence. However, the 5 elements domain that was formed by the fusion of the 5 domains was a domain that could be called heaven and earth. It was an existence that looked down on all other domains. More importantly, Lin Ye's domains had all reached more than 90,000, and 3 of them had even reached the limit of the first level. Among those present, even the invincible saints had not cultivated their domains to the limit of the first level. However, Lin Yi had done it. Moreover, he had cultivated a few domains to such an extent. In the world of Xia, since ancient times, no one had cultivated the 5 elements domain. Rumble rumble in the sky, Lin Yi had the 5 elements domain. He kept throwing out heavenly emperor punches. The damage that the Blood Emperor had caused him was instantly healed by his self-healing body. For a moment it was as though he had an immortal body. He couldn't be killed no matter how hard he tried. However, he couldn't shake the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor's defense and power were beyond his imagination. Blood Emperor, show me what you got. Lin Yi floated in the sky and fought the Blood Emperor head-on. He didn't need to dodge or move. He directly used his strongest defense and strongest attack to fight the Blood Emperor head-on. The army and experts from the 4 tribes and the human army and experts were dumbfounded. They didn't expect such a scene to happen in the battle between Lin Yi and the Blood Emperor. Powerful. Too powerful. Lin Yi, who had the 5 elements domain and the self-healing body, was simply immortal. The Blood Emperor's face grew grave. He didn't expect the human junior to be so demonic. Do you think I can't do anything to you with the 5 elements domain and the self-healing body? You're too ignorant. The Blood Emperor was furious. He waved his hands and a crimson ball of light appeared in front of him. The crimson ball of light engulfed the spiritual influence of heaven and earth and became extremely terrifying. All the experts' minds were almost pulled in. Heaven and earth began to tremble and sway at this moment. Be careful. That's the Blood Emperor's famous skill, Blood Rage. Heavenly Snow Saint and the other 3 invincible saints. They were shocked when they saw the crimson ball of light that the Blood Emperor had unleashed. Because they were severely injured. It was because of the Blood Rage. Blood Rage. It was the Blood Emperor's famous skill. Its power could destroy heaven and earth. Even the invincible saints couldn't resist it and could only fall from the sky after being severely injured. Seeing that he couldn't kill Lin Yi after such a long time, the Blood Emperor unleashed the Blood Rage. Taishan Shield. Absolute defense. Blazing flames, invincible attack. Lin Yi heard Heavenly Snow Saint's reminder and became even more cautious. Even the invincible saints were severely injured by this move. He didn't dare to be careless. Then, the supreme sacred weapon, Taishan Shield, was unleashed. He waved his hand and a Taishan Shield appeared. In his hand, the supreme sacred weapon, blazing flames, appeared. The broadsword carried an invincible saint aura. Then, 2 supreme sacred weapons appeared in front of him. The entire heaven and earth shook at that moment. Countless experts felt a huge pressure and almost knelt down. Boom! Boom! The crimson ball of light grew bigger and bigger. It was about 10 meters in size. The Blood Emperor waved his hand and the ball of light crushed toward Lin Yi with unparalleled destructive power. Wherever the ball of light passed, the space became extremely dark. All the spiritual influence and light were engulfed by the ball of light. Chapter 353. The Blood Emperor's blood rage could even severely injure an invincible saint. At this moment, the Blood Emperor had used it in his battle with Lin Yi. He wanted to use the blood rage to kill Lin Yi. All the experts present, although they didn't know how terrifying the blood rage was, But when they thought about how the heavenly snow saint and the other 3 invincible saints were injured by this move, they felt fear. Even invincible saints couldn't resist this move. Could a mere 5th tribulation half-true saint like Lin Yi withstand it? For a moment, all the human army and experts looked at the sky. They saw Lin Yi slashing out with his broadsword. Sword domain. The 99999 sword domain merged with the sword light and slashed the space to meet the blood-red light ball. In an instant, the sword light and the blood-red light ball collided. Boom! Boom! The sword light of the supreme artifact, crimson flames, slashed on the light ball. Instantly, the space cracked. The light ball directly swallowed the sword light, but the supreme artifact's power made the light ball tremble as if it was about to collapse. But in the end, the light ball offset the crimson flame's sword light. The power of the crimson flames dissipated. The blood-red light ball carried an even more terrifying power and crushed towards Lin Yi. The speed of the light ball exceeded Lin Yi's imagination. He couldn't react in time. He couldn't even teleport in time. Suddenly, the light ball collided with Lin Yi's 5 elements domain. Pucci. The 5 elements domain was powerful and terrifying. But the Blood Emperor was the great sage. The power of the great sage's move was extremely overbearing. It wasn't something Lin Yi could withstand. For a moment, the 5 elements domain burst. The light ball crushed in front of Lin Yi. The absolute defense of the Tai Chi shield broke. The Tai Chi shield trembled. The Supreme Saint armor's light dimmed. Lin Yi's body flew into the distance like a kite with a short string. A mouthful of blood spilled in the air. Even with the 5 elements domain, the Supreme Saint armor, the Tai Chi shield, the absolute defense, and the Divine Dragon 9 transformations, he was still seriously injured. He was shocked to the extreme. But there was something normal about it. Because the Blood Emperor was the great sage. Even if it was just a beginner great sage. However, the great sage was the great sage. He wasn't someone a mere half-sage could compare to. Even an invincible saint wouldn't be a match for the great sage, let alone a half-saint. Being able to survive the Blood Emperor's furious attack was something to be proud of. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin Yi was severely injured by the Blood Emperor. His body quickly streaked across the space. In the end, when he was 10 miles away from the Blood Emperor, he steadied himself. He was extremely weak, and his face was pale and powerless. His chest was in great pain. At this moment, he knew the disparity between him and the great sage. Even if he were to use his strongest attack and defense, he wouldn't be able to shake the great sage's beginner stage Blood Emperor. It was already amazing that he didn't die. Just as Blood Emperor was walking towards Lin Yi, the void was torn apart by a strange power, and a hole appeared. A tall figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. Heaven and earth trembled in front of this figure, and the space kept shattering. Boundless demonic chi soared into the sky and swept across everything. Demon Venerable. The demon race's Demon Venerable had appeared. No one had expected the Demon Venerable to appear at this moment. The human army and experts were helpless against the Blood Emperor. Now that the Demon Venerable was here, everyone felt a huge pressure. Moreover, after the Demon Venerable arrived, he walked towards Lin Yi. This situation caused everyone to be puzzled. A 5th tribulation half-true saint had actually attracted the Demon Venerable and the Blood Emperor to make a move. This was too shocking. Demon Venerable. When the Blood Emperor saw the Demon Venerable walking towards Lin Yi, he shouted. His tone was extremely calm. However, it gave off a domineering feeling. The space froze. The Demon Venerable stopped and turned around to look at the Blood Emperor. In an instant, the atmosphere was extremely strange. Boom! 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 The ground shook. The space kept shattering. This scene was like the end of the world. The sounds of destruction came from afar, and it was extremely fast. Soon, a huge black figure appeared in the line of sight of the experts in the Great Xia Holy City. The black figure was 10,000 feet tall. Taking a closer look, it was a huge demon. Pure demonic chi wrapped around his body. That piece of heaven and earth was filled with demonic chi. Wherever the demon passed, the ground turned into a demon domain. In just a few breaths' time, the huge demon appeared 100 miles away from the Great Xia Holy City. Although the demon was 100 miles away from the Great Xia Holy City, the demon could reach the edge of the Great Xia Holy City with a stretch of his hand. Demon Lord. The Blood Emperor and the Demon Venerable shouted at the same time. The tens of millions of Devil Race soldiers and experts all knelt down at this moment. Demon Lord. That's right, this huge demon was the Demon Lord. He was 10,000 feet tall. Compared to the first time Lin Yi saw him, he was 1,000 times stronger. At this moment, the human army and experts were completely shocked. They felt a huge pressure, and for a moment, everyone was panicking as if the end of the world had arrived. That's right, the Demon Lord, the Demon Venerable, and the Blood Emperor appeared outside the Great Xia Holy City at the same time. It was impossible not to be afraid. Whoosh, whoosh. Inside the Great Xia Holy City, countless top saints rushed over. Because everyone knew that the battle between the four races and the human race had begun. Life and death would be decided at this moment. However, the Demon Venerable, the Demon Lord, and the Blood Emperor formed a triangle, and Lin Yi was in the center. Captain! Captain! Zhou Baiyu, Lai Tenyu, and the others were stunned when they saw Lin Ye's current situation. At this moment, they were very clear that even if Lin Yi was an invincible saint, he would still be reduced to ashes, not to mention he was just a fifth tribulation half-true saint. The three great sage-level existences could easily crush Lin Yi to death with a stretch of their hand. The great Xia world should end. The Demon Lord's huge eyes looked at Lin Yi. Other than the Demon Venerable and the Blood Emperor, no one else knew what he meant. Of course, Lin Yi knew, because he had 6 pages of the wordless heavenly book on him. The Demon Venerable, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord definitely had the wordless heavenly book. Out of the 4 of them, only one could obtain the complete wordless heavenly book. In the eyes of the Demon Venerable, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Lord, Lin Yi was just an ant that had the wordless heavenly book. The real battle was still between the 3 of them. Is the great Xia world ending? You don't have the final say. Lin Yi hovered in midair. In front of the 3 great sages, he was like a small boat in the middle of a stormy sea that could capsize at any moment. However, at this moment, he could only face them head-on. Everything that happened today was beyond his imagination and expectations. According to his plan, he wanted to separate the Demon Lord, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Venerable, and defeat them one by one. However, he didn't expect the Blood Emperor to be so terrifying. He also didn't expect the Demon Lord and the Demon Venerable to appear. The ending had to be decided in advance. The Demon Venerable snorted coldly, and a huge palm slammed towards Lin Yi. The palm was filled with endless demonic chi and demonic power. Boom! In front of the Demon Venerable's attack, Lin Yi didn't even have the chance to fight back. He was slammed into the ground from the air. A shocking cloud of dust rose from the ground, and Lin Ye's body disappeared. Chapter 354. Captain. Little junior brother. The human experts and army had already retreated to the defensive divine array of the Great Xia Holy City. Seeing Lin Yi being slapped into the ground by the Demon Venerable, Xue Feng, Nangong Xie, and the others were all shocked, and their faces were filled with sadness. However, they all knew that at this moment, no one could save Lin Yi. How powerful was the Demon Venerable? How powerful was the Blood Emperor? How powerful was the Demon Master? It was not something they could guess or imagine. Any one of the 3 could kill an invincible saint with a wave of their hand, let alone a weak half-saint. Roar! Boom! A terrifying aura rushed up from the ground. Lin Ye's figure appeared. A loud voice rang out in the air. However, as soon as Lin Yi appeared, the Demon Venerable slapped Lin Yi down again. Before Lin Yi landed on the ground, countless cracks appeared on his body. His entire body was dripping with blood. Once, twice, a total of 36 times. Every time, Lin Yi was injured by the demon Venerable, and his body was almost torn apart. However, Lin Ye's body recovered in an instant when he was seriously injured, which shocked countless human experts. Even the demon Venerable was extremely surprised. They did not expect that there would be such a miraculous and powerful self-healing body in the world. Humph! When Lin Yi rushed out from the ground again, the demon master, who had not moved, slapped his huge demonic palm toward Lin Yi, who was flying up. Suddenly, this space shattered. Lin Ye's body directly collapsed. The blood curtain dyed the space red. This scene was extremely tragic. Biluo, lend me your power. Underground, Lin Ye's eyes were blood-red. He was like a peerless demon, and the aura of his body was rapidly rising. His collapsed body was dripping with blood. The self-healing body quickly healed his injuries. Remember, you will pay a great price to borrow my power. Also, I have to sleep for 3 years. Biluo's voice sounded in Lin Ye's sea of consciousness. He reminded Lin Yi. She had been with Lin Yi for a few years, and this was the first time that Lin Yi wanted to borrow her strength. In the past, Lin Yi was very powerful, and he could deal with any danger he encountered by himself. He didn't need to borrow her strength. Moreover, before Lin Yi became a half-saint, he didn't have a strong physique and strength to withstand her power. Although he could withstand her power now, he still had to pay a huge price. I know. Lin Yi nodded. At this moment, he had no other choice. If he did not borrow Biluo's power, he would not be able to leave this place alive. Even though he was a divine will saint with many precious treasures, none of his actions could escape the grasp of the 3 great sage. Or rather, in front of the 3 great sage, he was just a pitifully small ant. She could crush him to death however she wanted. Boom! Just as Lin Yi nodded, there was a buzzing sound in his mind. Biluo in his sea of consciousness released an unparalleled power that spread throughout Lin Ye's body. Suddenly, Lin Ye's aura skyrocketed. His cultivation base rose steadily. 5th tribulation, half-saint, 6th tribulation, half-saint, 7th tribulation, half-saint, 8th tribulation, half-saint. In an instant, Lin Ye's cultivation base rose to the peak of the 9th tribulation half-saint, breaking through the shackles of the half-saint and entering the early stage of the saint realm. Then, middle saint realm, late saint realm, peak saint realm. Finally, his cultivation base stopped at the invincible saint realm. An aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth unscrupulously broke through the ground and filled the entire space. Lin Ye's changes underground shocked the demon master, blood emperor, and venerable beast. Countless human experts were also shocked, but they didn't know what had happened underground. Boom! With a loud explosion, Lin Ye's body rushed out again. Seeing Lin Yi rush out, the demon master's huge eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. The previous slap didn't kill a half-saint human. Not to mention a half-saint, even an invincible saint would be killed by that slap. However, Lin Yi didn't die. Now, he rushed out again. Without any hesitation, the demon master's huge demonic palm slapped toward Lin Yi. This time, the demonic palm's power was countless times stronger than before. Sky-destroying finger. Lin Yi, who rushed out, felt an unparalleled power crushing down. He already knew that this was the demon master's power. Without any hesitation, he pointed a finger at the huge demonic palm. His body flashed strangely, and he broke free from the demon master's lock. When he appeared again, he was already hundreds of feet high in the sky. But in front of the demon master's huge body, he was like a small ant in front of a giant dragon. Chi in front of the sky-destroying finger, the demonic palm was directly penetrated. The unparalleled sky-destroying finger stopped the demonic palm for a short while. The demonic palm didn't stop at all and slammed down fiercely. Suddenly, the ground collapsed and the void shook. The demon venerable and blood emperor didn't know what happened to Lin Yi. That aura, that cultivation. He actually reached the invincible saint realm from the fifth tribulation half-saint realm. It wasn't just the demon Venerable and Blood Emperor. The human experts were extremely shocked. They didn't know what method Lin Yi used to raise his cultivation to such a terrifying level in a short time. Although they didn't know how Lin Yi did it, they knew that they knew. However, they all knew that Lin Yi must have used a secret technique to raise his cultivation. However, it was only for a short period of time. There was a time limit. After the time was up, he would return to his original realm. Kill him first, Blood Emperor shouted. He had just had a great battle with Lin Yi. At that time, Lin Yi was only a fifth tribulation half-saint. Even with such cultivation, Blood Emperor couldn't kill Lin Yi. Now, Lin Yi's cultivation had increased by several levels in an instant. He wasn't too far away from their cultivation level. Lin Yi's strength was definitely many times stronger than before. If they didn't kill Lin Yi quickly, there might be an unforeseen event. After he finished speaking, he sent another blood-red ball of light towards Lin Yi. He used one of his famous ultimate moves, Blood Rage. It was obvious that the Blood Emperor was afraid of Lin Yi. Slash! Lin Yi's figure flashed, and the crimson flame appeared in his hand. The Supreme Saint Artifact's unparalleled holy aura erupted. Then, the crimson flame slashed towards the blood-red ball of light. Previously, it was the blood rage that had injured him. At that time, he was only a fifth tribulation half-saint. Now, he borrowed Biluo's strength to temporarily raise his cultivation to the invincible saint realm. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded. The Supreme Saint Artifact, Crimson Flame, slashed the Blood Rage's ball of light. The unparalleled sword light slashed towards the Blood Emperor with the sword domain. Blood River. The Blood Emperor was shocked. He really didn't expect this. He didn't expect Lin Yi to be so terrifying after reaching the invincible saint realm. He broke his blood rage in one strike and threatened his life. He didn't dare to imagine if Lin Yi would kill him in an instant after reaching the great sage realm. Splash! The unparalleled sword light slashed the blood river. The Blood Emperor's body trembled, and a huge wound appeared on his body. Demonic Rend. The venerable beast also realized how terrifying Lin Yi was. A mere fifth tribulation half-saint had become an invincible saint in an instant. Moreover, he was so terrifying after reaching the invincible saint realm. Even the early great sage Blood Emperor wasn't his match. When did such a terrifying monster appear in the human race? If he was allowed to continue growing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Chapter 355. Shameless. The human army and experts couldn't help but feel angry when they saw the Demon Lord and Blood Emperor teaming up to deal with Lin Yi. They despised the Demon Lord's actions. The Great Sage was actually teaming up with another Great Sage to bully a half-saint junior. Suddenly, more than 10 invincible saints from the Great Xia Sacred City flew toward the Demon Lord and Blood Emperor to help Lin Yi. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion. The Demon Lord's fist collided with the destructive means of 5 or 6 invincible saints. The Great Sage's dominance was fully displayed at this moment. 5 or 6 invincible saints spat out blood as their bodies flew out like kites with a broken string. They were severely injured. However, their injuries were in exchange for Lin Yi's safety. Blazing flames. Chilling light of 19 states. Lin Yi held the supreme artifact Blazing Flames in his hand as he wore the Supreme Saint armor and activated the Divine Dragon 9 changes. The Tai-Xian shield spun around him. The 5 elements field was compressed to a radius of 100 meters. He was like a god of war descending. He slashed out with his sword. Suddenly, there was a cold light between heaven and earth as the unparalleled sword light slashed onto Blood Emperor. At this moment, his cultivation had reached the level of an invincible saint. With 3 supreme artifacts, his strength was comparable to the Great Sage. Even Blood Emperor, who was at the early stage of the Great Sage, was in a difficult situation in front of him. But he knew. He had borrowed the power of Biluo, and his time was limited. After the power disappeared, he would have to endure a period of weakness and pay a huge price. Biluo would also be in a deep sleep for 3 years. This power could only last for 15 minutes. If he couldn't end the battle within 15 minutes, he would vanish. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The battle outside the great Xia sacred city was fierce. Countless saints were fighting in the air. The most tragic battle was between the human pinnacle saints and the invincible saints, as well as the experts of the 4 races. The most exciting battle was between Lin Yi and Blood Emperor. He had already gained the upper hand. Every strike was enough to destroy heaven and earth. The power of a supreme sacred weapon was fully displayed. The demon Venerable was also entangled by 6 or 7 invincible saints. As for the demon master, ever since Lin Yi fought with the Blood Emperor, he didn't take any action. He just stood aside and his huge body gave off boundless pressure. Since he didn't take any action, the human experts naturally didn't provoke him. At this moment, Lin Yi willed Silent Soul to come out of the ninefold space. As soon as he came out, he stretched out his hand and took out his supreme sacred artifact, the Source of Darkness. Suddenly, a destructive dark territory light pillar blasted toward the Blood Emperor. The sky and the land within a 100-mile radius turned pitch black. It turned from day to night in an instant. All the experts couldn't react in time. Sword Chi traversing 30,000 li. Silent Soul's dark pillar and dark domain appeared at the same time. Lin Yi swung out the raging crimson flame in his hand. The second style of the heavenly sword 12 styles broke out. His divine will surged as the heavenly heart pierced through space and entered the Blood Emperor's sea of consciousness. The Blood Emperor screamed miserably. His scream reverberated across the sky. Lin Yi was now a divine will saint, and his divine will was at the peak of level 55. When he used the heavenly heart pierce, it was thousands of times stronger than before. Even the great saint-level Blood Emperor would fall for it if he was caught off guard. Boom crack, the sound of destruction could be heard. Soon after, the dark domain disappeared and the sky regained its brightness. Silent Soul had a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. She looked miserable. However, there was a charming smile on her beautiful face. Because the sneak attack was a success, she successfully helped Lin Yi to divert his attention and joined forces with Lin Yi to kill the Blood Emperor. Kill. Not bad. It was a kill. The Blood Emperor had been killed. The supreme sacred artifact, raging crimson flame, the heavenly sword 12 styles and the dark domain attracted the Blood Emperor. The destructive power of the supreme sacred artifact, the source of darkness, struck the Blood Emperor. Even if the Blood Emperor was a god, he would be attracted by the few supreme sacred artifacts and destructive means. In the end, his soul was destroyed by Lin Ye's heavenly heart pierce. Under the piercing pain in his soul, he lost consciousness for a short while. Losing consciousness was the beginning of his destruction. Boundless sword Qi pierced through the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor's sea of consciousness was crushed. His body was destroyed by the light pillar and sword Qi of the Source of Darkness. He disappeared from the world. Only a golden light was shining between the sky and the earth. The wings of space on Lin Ye's back flapped, and he disappeared. When he appeared again, he had traveled more than 10 miles and appeared in front of the golden light. He extended his hand to grab the golden light. Just as the golden light was about to be caught, the sky darkened. The sky darkened as a peerless destructive force slammed toward him. Just the saint's might and power alone had almost crushed him. Lin Yi couldn't hold it in any longer. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The golden light left him and landed in a huge palm. Rather than calling it a palm, it was more like a small mountain. The palm was too big, because the palm belonged to the Demon Master. The Demon Master was 10,000 feet tall. He could grab something 10 miles away with just one arm. Just now, the Demon Master snatched Lin Ye's spoils of war. The golden light lay in the huge palm. The tall demon master glanced at the golden light. His blood-red eyes flashed with excitement and bloodlust. He looked coldly at Lin Yi. That gaze was enough to destroy any expert below the saint level. Even Lin Yi, who was a divine will saint, felt his heart tremble. Boom! The demon master's other palm slammed toward Lin Yi again. He knew that this human had to be killed. Otherwise, undue delay would bring trouble. Just now, the Blood Emperor was killed. He felt a strong threat. This threat made him feel extremely unhappy. Heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron. Lin Yi roared. He used his divine will and saw a palm-sized cauldron appear in front of him. This was the middle-grade supreme sacred artifact, the heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron. After the heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron appeared, it instantly expanded. 1 foot, 100 feet, 100 feet. In just a short moment, the heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron had become 100 feet in size. The destructive power of the sacred artifact erupted and covered the sky and earth as it crushed toward the demon master. A mysterious suppressive force surrounded the cauldron. Seeing that the demon master's huge palm was about to hit him, the wings of space behind Lin Yi broke free from the space. A crack appeared in the space, causing him to quickly retreat. At the same time, his divine will controlled the heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron. The heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron smashed fiercely toward the huge palm. Boom! The destructive explosion shook the space. The unparalleled aftershock distorted the air and shattered the space inch by inch. The huge palm was smashed away by the power of the heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron. However, the heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron also bounced up and was almost out of Lin Yi's control. The attack of a middle-grade supreme sacred artifact couldn't hurt the demon master. This outcome shocked Lin Yi. The demon master and the Blood Emperor were both existences on the level of the great sage. However, their strength was worlds apart. Kill! Lin Yi roared and soared into the sky. Chapter 356. Blazing Flames, a Supreme Sacred Weapon. Even if it was a low-grade supreme sacred weapon, its power was enough to destroy the world. It could even kill sky saints and absolute saints, let alone a beginner great sage. However, it was Lin Yi who used the supreme sacred weapon. Lin Yi's cultivation was too low. Even if he borrowed Biluo's power, he was only an invincible saint. Facing the powerful demon lord, he was like an ant in front of a giant dragon. The sword was enough to destroy the world. The space was split into two. In an instant, the sword light landed in front of the demon lord. The demon lord stretched out his hand and blocked the sword light with his huge palm. His body didn't even shake. There was only a slight wound. Moreover, the wound disappeared very quickly. Lin Yi's destructive strike was just like scratching an itch to the fiend master. It was because the difference in cultivation between the two was too big. It was because the demon lord was too terrifying. Whoosh! There was a sound. After blocking Lin Yi's blazing flames, the demon lord's huge palm slapped towards Lin Yi. The space was quickly destroyed in front of his palm. It's over. It's over. The demon lord is too powerful. Lin Yi isn't his match at all. The demon lord is indeed powerful. Lin Yi is also terrifying. Even a few invincible saints were seriously injured by Blood Emperor. However, he killed Blood Emperor. If he reaches the great sage, the demon lord won't be his match. Captain, go for it. Junior, it'll be fine. The great Xia sacred leader bless Lin Yi. Pray that he survives. The army and experts of the great Xia sacred city, as well as the experts of the entire great Xia world in the city, either watched Lin Yi's battle with their own eyes or through the crystal screen. When they saw Lin Yi kill Blood Emperor, they were all very excited. Now that they saw the powerful demon lord attacking Lin Yi, all the experts of the great Xia world were worried for Lin Yi. Countless people of the great Xia world even knelt down to pray for Lin Yi. Just as Lin Yi was about to be hit by the huge palm. If he was hit, Even if Lin Yi had the Taishan shield and the supreme sacred armor, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. At this moment, Lin Yi moved his divine consciousness. A mirror the size of a palm appeared in his hand. Soul mirror. Light of soul. A smile appeared on Lin Yi's lips. He spoke softly, as if he was talking to himself. After that, the mirror shone at the huge palm. Suddenly, a faint light burst out. The light ignored the distance between them. Ignoring everything, it pierced through space and met the giant palm head-on. A sacred gods to God. That incomparably destructive palm changed its direction and slammed towards the Devil Lord. At the same time, a beam of light pierced through space and blasted onto the Devil Lord's body. Although this ray of light was as tiny as a firefly in the pitch-black night sky in front of the Devil Master, the Devil Master's eyes were filled with shock and fear. It was as if he had seen something terrifying. Boom! The Demon Lord's huge palm slapped down on his body. The huge body was smashed to the ground by his own attack. The magical light caused the Devil Master's devil chi to burn. Impossible! Impossible! At the moment, the Demon Lord seemed to have been possessed. He didn't care about his injuries. Instead, he stared in shock at the palm-sized mirror in Lin Yi's hand. Seeing the mirror was like seeing a ghost. His tone was filled with disbelief. However, no one knew what had happened to him. He was a dignified demon master. Even if he had been plotted against by that mirror, it shouldn't have been to this extent. For a moment, the armies and experts of the four races, as well as the human armies and experts, were all stunned. They had not expected such a scene to happen. From the beginning to the end, they did not know what terrifying thing the Demon Lord had encountered. 9 Cauldrons God Suppression. Lin Yi was also stunned by the Demon Lord's situation. However, he reacted in an instant. He used his divine consciousness to activate the 9 cauldrons. Suddenly, the 9 cauldrons floated in the air, and the unparalleled power of the sacred artifact crushed down. Lin Yi pressed his hands in the air, and the 9 cauldrons smashed down on the tall Demon Lord. Rumble! Rumble! When Lin Yi attacked the Demon Lord, countless saints of the Great Xia sacred city, as well as some pinnacle saints and invincible saints, directly gave up on the Demon Lord and exploded with destructive attacks. All of them blasted towards the Demon Lord. They all knew that the Demon Lord was much stronger than the Blood Emperor and the Demon Lord. If the Demon Lord didn't die, the Great Xia sacred city would be finished. As long as the Demon Lord was dead, it wouldn't be difficult to kill the Demon Lord. For a moment, thousands of destructive attacks enveloped the Demon Lord. Each attack was a saint's full attack. Most of them were even the saint's trump cards and some forbidden technique. Whoosh! At the moment when all the experts were dealing with the Demon Lord, the Demon Lord's figure flashed strangely and flew into the distance. This was because he had discovered something terrifying. This matter would determine their life and death. Now, even a god could change the outcome of this battle. If he didn't escape, the Blood Emperor's fate would be a lesson for him. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the void, Lin Yi was high above. Countless experts attacked the Demon Lord. When the Demon Lord reacted, he was already in a passive position. Moreover, the Demon Lord had escaped. All the experts were attacking him alone. But no one noticed. They didn't notice the changes in Lin Yi in the void. On Lin Yi's body, a destructive sword domain burst out. 99999 sword domains. Moreover, his sword domain was rapidly improving, devouring the battle intent of tens of millions of troops and experts. Finally, Lin Yi's change in sword intent caused a change in heaven and earth. Countless experts felt the change in heaven and earth, and couldn't help but look into the void. When they saw Lin Yi's sword intent improving in the void, they couldn't help but be surprised. Their faces were filled with shock. Sword domain improving. 99999 sword domain. He's breaking through the shackles. This is crazy. He's going to break through the first stage of the domain. Oh my god, this is too shocking. If he breaks through the first stage of the domain, he will be invincible in the same realm. Just the domain alone is enough to dominate a realm. It's just that the chances of success are too small. Something that even the great sage couldn't do, he, a half-sage, actually did it. Yes, many great sage only have 10 to 20,000 sword domains. But he has the capital and strength to break through the shackles of the domain at such a young age. Such a miracle has never happened in the legends. For a moment, all the humans in the great Xia world went crazy. If Lin Ye's sword domain improved and broke through the first stage shackles, this war would end. Lin Yi was experiencing all kinds of impossible miracles. In the eyes of countless people in the great Xia world, Lin Yi was sent by the heavens to save the great Xia world. Rumble! Rumble! The battle continued. Lin Ye's sword domain continued to improve and break through. But gradually, the sky became dark. The heavens were furious. Thunder rumbled and lightning arcs crisscrossed. Chapter 357. The heavens were furious and the earth trembled. Thunder resounded through the world, and streaks of lightning descended like water pillars. The realm tribulation had arrived at this moment. This was the first time in tens of thousands of years that a realm tribulation had arrived in the great Xia world. Within a radius of 10,000 miles, heaven and earth were destroyed. All the human armies and experts, except for pinnacle saints, had retreated to the great Xia holy city. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed by the realm tribulation. The remaining pinnacle saints and invincible saints all attacked the demon master with all their might. They had to ensure that they could suppress the demon master before Lin Yi broke the shackles and prevent the demon master from interrupting Lin Ye's realm tribulation. No matter what price they had to pay, they would not hesitate. Because, as long as Lin Yi broke the shackles, he would be able to defeat the demon master and even kill him. Lin Yi was floating in the void. The endless sword realm enveloped him. His entire body was under the bombardment of the realm tribulation, but his mind was immersed in comprehending the realm tribulation. He comprehended the heaven and earth, the sword realm, and the profound meaning of the realm tribulation. 2/3 of the divine sword constitution had truly displayed its magic and power at this moment. His body was constantly improving. The endless realm tribulation caused Lin Yi to be riddled with injuries. However, the injuries healed as soon as they appeared, almost in an instant. It was so fast that no one could tell if he had been injured by the domain tribulation. Because the self-healing body was too heaven-defying and miraculous, the injuries healed as soon as they appeared. On the ground, a pinnacle saint burned his blood essence and lifespan. His entire body turned into a ray of light and charged toward the demon master. The self-destruction of a pinnacle saint was shocking. In order to suppress the demon master, the pinnacle saint did not hesitate to self-destruct for eternity. This was for humanity, for the great Xia world, and to fight for a chance for Lin Yi. Boom! Self-destruction. Blood soared into the sky. Unparalleled power crushed the demon master's body. The demon master's towering body could not help but shake. A huge bloody hole was left on his body, and black demon blood kept flowing out. However, this did not hurt the demon master's foundation. Instead, it angered the demon master. For a moment, the demon master swept up endless demon chi. The area within a radius of 1,000 miles became a demon realm. Countless pinnacle saints were heavily injured. Even many invincible saints were heavily injured. At this moment the demon lord, who had been suppressed, finally gained the upper hand. His huge palm kept slapping down. Every time his palm slapped down, a pinnacle saint would be seriously injured and lose his combat power. Some even died. In a short 15 minutes, 38 pinnacle saints had fallen. The 8 invincible saints vanished into thin air. The battle was extremely tragic. The human army and strong cultivators in the great Xia sacred city were all sad. The oppressive aura made the great Xia sacred city extremely heavy. It should be known that every pinnacle saint was the pillar of the great Xia world. In this battle, over 30 pinnacle saints had been destroyed in a short 15-minute. This caused the vitality of the Grand Xia to be greatly damaged. Celestial Sword Godhead. The sword was born for me. And at this moment, Lin Ye's domain tribulation gradually weakened. His aura became terrifying to the extreme. His sword domain had broken through the shackles and had truly ascended to a higher level. Each of the 100,000 domain of swords contained unparalleled power. The sword domain turned into rays of light and surrounded Lin Yi. He stood in the void. Lin Yi looked down on the world. His entire person was like the master of this world. He slowly raised his hand. Suddenly, the unparalleled sword domain surged wildly. The entire world trembled at this moment as if the end of the world had arrived. However, this was not the end. The long swords in the hands of the strong cultivators of the great Xia world all broke free from the hands of their masters and flew toward the void. It was as if the sword domain in the air was their master. In a short 10 breath, tens of thousands of long swords had gathered in the void. The long swords had all merged with the sword domain. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion. The sword domain erupted with billions of magical brilliance. Finally, Lin Yi successfully broke through the shackles of the domain. He had already done what a half-saint could not do. He had also done what a saint could not do. Now, he had done what a loud voice could not do. Sword domain, I am the master. Lin Yi stood proudly between heaven and earth. He had mastered the endless sword domain. At this moment, he felt the magical and wonderful sublimation of the domain. After breaking through the shackles, the sword domain became even more powerful. In his mind, an obscure image appeared. This was the domain talent that he had obtained after breaking through the shackles. There might not be one person in a billion who could break through the shackles of the domain, but he had done so when he was a half-saint and had even obtained the domain talent. Breaking through the shackles was difficult. Obtaining the domain talent was even more difficult. Out of 10,000 people who broke through the shackles of the domain, there might be one who obtained the domain talent, which was the domain ability. At this moment, he did not know what the domain ability he had obtained was. However, he felt that his domain was no longer a simple support. It had become a destructive attack. With a soft shout, the unparalleled sword domain transformed into hundreds and thousands of domain light swords and bombarded the demon lord. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh, the peak and invincible saints of the great Xia world. Seeing that Lin Yi had broken through the shackles of the domain, they were all extremely excited as their figures flashed and retreated quickly. Because, at this moment, this place did not belong to them. It was the battlefield between Lin Yi and the Demon Lord. A battle between the peak of the great Xia world was about to erupt here. Either Lin Yi would kill the Demon Lord to prove his Tao, or the Demon Lord would kill Lin Yi and the great Xia world would once again fall into the abyss of war with the four races. They did not know yet. If Lin Yi died at this moment, the great Xia world would no longer be like what the humans imagined. It would be even more tragic. The entire great Xia world would become a purgatory on earth and become the slaves of the four races. Roar! The Demon Lord looked at the endless sword domain light swords. His eyes became solemn. This was the first time he felt that the problem was serious. Since he was born, this was the first time he felt that his life was threatened. He no longer dared to underestimate Lin Yi and regarded Lin Yi as a truly powerful enemy. At the same time, no matter what the consequences were, he had to think of a way to kill Lin Yi. If Lin Yi did not die, he would become a great threat to the demons. Perhaps the entire demons would vanish in front of Lin Yi. A huge palm. It was never slapped out again. Instead, it drew out a magical demonic martial technique. Instantly, endless demonic chi turned into demonic dragons and greeted Lin Yi's sword domain light swords. Rumble! Rumble! Countless demonic dragons collided with countless sword domain light swords. At this moment, The space was constantly shattering. The Earth was rapidly collapsing. The area within a radius of 10,000 miles was in ruins, turning into countless deep pits and ravines. Millions of troops and experts of the four races disappeared at this moment. They did not even have the chance to escape. This was a world. Only Lin Yi and the Demon Lord were alive. The tragic scene made the heavens furious. Within 10,000 miles, it had become a purgatory on Earth. There was no trace of life. And the demonic dragons and the sword domain light swords were still constantly colliding. Lin Yi floated in the air with a solemn expression. The Demon Lord's expression was also extremely solemn. Chapter 358. The Demon Lord's solemn expression gradually turned into an evil smile. Because the power of his all-out attack blocked Lin Yi's sword domain sword light. And he even had the upper hand. Originally, he was worried that Lin Yi would have a domain divine ability after breaking the shackles of the domain. Now, he was completely relieved because Lin Yi didn't have a domain divine ability. Even if the endless sword domain sword light was a domain divine ability, it couldn't do anything to him. Killing Lin Yi was as easy as flipping his hand. Rumble rumble, the endless demonic dragon blocked the sword domain sword light. The sword domain sword light gradually disappeared. Immediately after, the demonic dragon pierced through the sword light and crushed towards Lin Yi. Puff puff, the demonic dragon formed from demonic chi. It crashed onto Lin Yi's body. Lin Yi's body quickly collapsed. He spat out mouthfuls of blood. His collapsed body quickly healed, and at the same time, he retreated rapidly. Sky Demon Domain. God-destroying fury. The tall Demon Lord slapped his huge palm towards Lin Yi. This palm contained the Demon Lord's most powerful demonic martial technique. Compared to the Blood Emperor's Blood Fury, it was many times more powerful. The huge palm crushed the space. The Great Xia Holy City's defensive divine array couldn't help but shake slightly. In front of the huge palm, Lin Yi, who was retreating rapidly, was like a small ant. Whether it was size or power, the difference between the two was countless worlds. When the humans in the Great Xia Holy City saw this scene, they couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. They didn't expect that Lin Yi wouldn't be a match for the Demon Lord after breaking the shackles of the domain. Now, Lin Yi was about to be killed by the Demon Lord. In the Great Xia world, hope turned into despair. Captain. Junior brother. The people who were most worried about Lin Yi were the members of the God of War team and Nangong Xia. At this moment, even the experts from the Heavenly Sun Empire, the Heavenly Gene Empire, and the 8 foreign races who didn't like Lin Yi were worried about Lin Yi. Because now was the battle between the demons and the humans. Was it going to end? Lin Yi muttered to himself. In his line of sight, the huge palm was getting closer and closer. The boundless power almost crushed him into pieces. He was unwilling to accept it. Yes, he was unwilling to accept this. Because he still had a lot of things to do, and a lot of people who cared about him were waiting for him. I can't die. I can't die. Roar. Just as the giant hand was about to press down on Lin Yi roared. His body suddenly exploded with an aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth. His aura broke through the void. His entire body strangely broke free from the giant palm. Furthermore, the huge palm strangely paused for a moment. Boom! In the next second after Lin Yi escaped from the giant palm slammed into the ground. Instantly, the ground cracked and collapsed for hundreds of miles. Lin Yi's figure appeared in the air 100 miles away from the Devil Master. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. His clothes were torn, and he looked like a beggar. However, he was emitting an unparalleled aura. It was as if he was the ruler of the world. No one dared to look down on this seemingly frail body. No one dared to look down on that beggar-like body. At this moment, they didn't know how Lin Yi did it just now. The only thing they knew. It was Lin Yi who escaped the Devil Master's destructive attack. Kill! Kill! The loud voice was like the roar of a dragon in the 9 heavens. Lin Yi's aura soared. In his hand, a dazzling sword light burst forth from the blazing flames. His figure flashed, and he charged towards the demon lord. This action stunned all the humans. He was clearly no match for the demon lord, but he dared to take the initiative to attack. However, there were many saints in the great Xia sacred city who saw something strange. When they looked carefully at Lin Yi, countless saints were stunned. Because they discovered that Lin Ye's cultivation did not change, but his aura and strength were thousands of times stronger than before. His aura and strength were even more terrifying than the Devil Master's. The changes that happened one after the other were terrifying. Soon, they admitted a fact. A very heaven-defying fact. God and Devil taboo. Fiend God taboo. Several invincible saints exclaimed at the same time, their eyes full of shock. Immediately after, some other knowledgeable saints also shouted. This was the common understanding and discovery of countless great sage saints. Fiend God taboo? What is a fiend god taboo? What? Lin Yi is actually a fiend god taboo now, too monstrous. Among hundreds of millions of peerless monstrous geniuses, there might not be one who can reach the fiend god taboo. The fiend god taboo is an invincible state that can kill opponents regardless of their realm. However, this state only lasts for a short period of time, and there is no pattern to it. Yes, the fiend god taboo is the performance of a supreme monstrous genius. No one really knows the cultivation and pattern of the fiend god taboo, but entering the state of the fiend god taboo is invincible. The world is unpredictable. I thought that he could break through the shackles of the domain and kill the Devil Master, but in the end, he was not the Devil Master's match. The difference in cultivation is too great, but I didn't expect him to enter the state of the fiend god taboo. Look at his eyes, one side is clear and the other side is changing. Isn't this his first time entering the state of the fiend god taboo? The humans in the great Xia holy city were in an uproar. Countless saints were discussing. The fiend god taboo and Lin Ye's name were deeply engraved in the hearts of all humans. That's right, Lin Yi had entered the state of the fiend god taboo. Boom! An unparalleled sword light pierced through the Devil Master's body. The Devil Master's body swayed, and he sent a palm toward Lin Yi. At this moment, the Devil Master was extremely shocked. Lin Yi in the state of the fiend god taboo was even stronger than him, and Lin Ye's sword had landed on him and severely injured him. In front of Lin Yi, he was no longer the mighty Devil Master, but a weak clown. Heavenly Emperor Fist. A loud roar. Lin Yi punched out toward the Devil Master's giant palm. Unparalleled destructive power collided with each other. The Demon Lord was 100,000 feet tall. In front of him, Lin Yi was like a drop of sea water in front of a sea. Lin Ye's entire body wasn't even as big as a fingernail of the Demon Lord, but this punch directly sent the Demon Lord flying. Suddenly, a mountain range outside the great Xia holy city was directly flattened by the Devil Master. Kill! 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 Lin Ye's heavenly Emperor Fist kept blasting out, and the blazing crimson flames kept slashing out. His mouth was full of roars and battle cries. This part of the world was dominated by Lin Yi. The tall Devil Master was like a sandbag being constantly sent flying by Lin Yi. On his body, the damage caused by the supreme artifact blazing crimson flames was getting more and more terrifying. A moment later, one of the Devil Master's arms was cut off. Heaven, suppression, supreme, cauldron. At this moment, Lin Yi put away the blazing crimson flames. His divine will activated the Heaven Suppression Supreme Cauldron. Suddenly, the Heaven Suppression Supreme Cauldron became bigger and floated in the air. Lin Yi stood on top of the Supreme Cauldron and stepped on it. The Supreme Cauldron was like a meteor as it pressed down on the Devil Master's head. Boom! The Heaven Suppression Supreme Cauldron and the Devil Master's head collided. The Devil Master's head was smashed into pieces. Unparalleled demonic chi soared into the sky, wreaking havoc in the space. The space kept shattering, and the tall body slowly fell down. But Lin Yi did not stop. A slender long sword appeared in his hand, and the long sword burst out with the light of the Milky Way. The Milky Way sword light pierced through the Devil Master's body, and bursts of light burst out from the Devil Master's body. Boom! Chapter 359. The Devil Master was an early great sage. After his birth, he dominated the Grand Xia. Even the Blood Emperor and Venerable Beast paled in comparison to him. However, he was still killed by Lin Yi in the end. In other words, the Devil Master's death was the most aggrieved. First, he looked down on Lin Yi, sitting on the mountain to watch the tigers fight. He wanted to take advantage of the situation. He didn't expect Lin Yi to kill the Blood Emperor. Later, he was injured by Lin Ye's soul mirror. After that, he was suppressed by the human peak saints and invincible saint. When he gained the upper hand, Lin Yi broke through the shackles of the domain. However, he still relied on the great sage's cultivation to suppress Lin Yi. Just when he was feeling happy. Unfortunately, Lin Yi entered the Fiend God taboo. A powerful Devil Master was killed by a half-true saint. Even if Lin Yi entered the Fiend God taboo in a short time and became an invincible saint with the help of others, he was still a fifth tribulation half-true saint. A fifth tribulation half-true saint contending with three great sages and finally winning. Lin Yi. Lin Yi. Captain. Captain. Lin Yi. After a short moment of silence in the Grand Xia Holy City, the entire Holy City was in an uproar. At this moment, as long as one was a human, there was no one who wasn't excited. Everyone's heart beat with Lin Yi. From hope to despair, they saw hope from despair, and then from hope to despair. In the end, Lin Yi miraculously turned the situation around and killed the Devil Master. This kind of feeling made people have mixed feelings. The final victory belonged to Lin Yi and the humans of the Grand Xia Holy City. For thousands of years, this day was the happiest moment for humanity. This day was also a historical moment for humanity. This day was unforgettable for the humans of the Grand Xia Holy City. The Devil Master fell. His tall body turned into Devil Chi. Lin Yi reached out and grabbed the two balls of golden light. Without hesitation, the two balls of golden light entered the 9 layers space. His face revealed excitement. The two balls of golden light were naturally the 2 pages of the wordless heavenly book. After putting away the golden light, Lin Yi made a grabbing motion, and a spatial ring fell into his hand. Lin Yi didn't even look at it, and directly put it away. His figure flashed, disappearing in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already at the edge of the sky. He chased after the demon Venerable. The human army and experts knew Lin Ye's goal. He wanted to kill the demon Venerables while he was still in his Fiend God taboo state. If the Fiend God taboo was not there, killing the demon Venerables would take a lot more effort. Suppress. Suppress. A dozen invincible saints appeared in the sacred city of the Xia dynasty. More than 10 invincible saints joined forces to suppress the Devil Master's Devil Chi. The city was filled with cheers. However, the Great Xia Holy City sent out millions of troops to attack the 4 races. Without the Demon Master, the Blood Emperor, and the Demon Master, the 4 races were no match for the human experts and troops no matter how strong they were. This day has finally arrived. Our mission is finally over. The Great Xia Holy City and the city of Weiling. Countless guardians revealed a look of relief on their faces. They had waited for tens of thousands of years, and this day had finally arrived. On this day they had truly witnessed a miracle. They had seen what it meant to be monstrous and heaven-defying. They finally understood the reason for their existence. Only such a monstrous talent was worthy of their protection. The history of the Great Xia dynasty will unfold in the 9 heaven world. I really didn't expect your origin to be so shocking. In the Great Xia Holy City there was a 10,000 feet tall altar. Below the altar, a faint voice sounded. A day later, a weak figure appeared in front of the Great Xia Holy City. After the figure landed, it was a young man in green. The young man was extremely weak. He was dragging a broadsword in his hand. His entire body was drenched in blood. Although he was extremely weak, his thin body looked like it would collapse at any time. However, his eyes were sharp and wise. He gave off a faintly discernible and peerless aura. Lin Yi. That's right, he was Lin Yi. A day ago, he killed the Blood Emperor and the Demon Master. Then, he took advantage of the divine demon taboo to chase after the Demon Master. However, no one expected that the divine demon taboo would disappear just as he caught up with the Demon Master. Something even more frightening followed closely. With the help of Biluo's power, the divine demon taboo disappeared as well. His entire person seemed to have been sucked dry. The Demon Master also noticed Lin Yi's situation and laughed maniacally. In this battle, Lin Yi had truly experienced life and death. He had hovered on the edge of life and death. It was even more dangerous than the battle with the Devil Lord. In the end, he had relied on his supreme sacred artifact, divine will, and realm mystique to kill the Demon Lord. However, he had also suffered terrifying injuries. Even the self-healing body couldn't recover immediately. Lin Yi. Since the end of the battle, the Great Xia Holy City had sent out countless super experts to patrol to prevent the remnants of the four races from coming again. When the patrolling experts saw Lin Yi, they couldn't help but be stunned. When they saw Lin Yi's terrible condition, they were extremely shocked. Then, more than 10 saint-level experts came to Lin Yi's side and protected Lin Yi as he entered the city. At the same time, they passed the news of Lin Yi's return to the Guardians. In the Holy City, countless experts saw Lin Yi. The news spread quickly. Lin Yi chased after the Demon Master and returned to the Great Xia Holy City with serious injuries. No one knew whether the Demon Master was alive or not. The Demon Master is slightly stronger than the Blood Emperor. However, the Demon Master can't be compared to the Demon Master. Lin Yi even killed the Demon Master. It should be easy for him to deal with the Demon Master. Looking at his current situation, he should have left the divine demon taboo during the battle. I wonder if the Demon Master is dead. Lin Yi returned. The Demon Master should be dead. Otherwise, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to return in such a state. As long as Lin Yi returns alive, even if the Demon Master isn't dead, he doesn't have much time left. The Great Xia Holy City was in an uproar again. Topics related to Lin Yi filled the entire Holy City. However, after Lin Yi returned to the sacred city of the Great Xia dynasty, he remained in the sacred palace and did not come out again. No one knew how he was doing, let alone whether the Demon Lord was dead or alive. The thing that everyone wanted to know the most was the battle between Lin Yi and the Demon Master. Soon a piece of news came from the Holy Palace. Lin Yi caught up to the Demon Master and recovered his cultivation to the 5th Tribulation half-true saint. After leaving the divine demon taboo, he killed the Demon Master in a bloody battle. The Great Xia Holy City is hunting down the 4 races and restoring peace to the Great Xia Holy City. The simple yet powerful news spread throughout the Great Xia Holy City. This time, the Great Xia Holy City's experts were even more shocked. Lin Yi had temporarily raised his cultivation to the Invincible Saint realm, recovered his cultivation to the 5th Tribulation half-true saint realm, and even left the divine demon taboo. Under such circumstances, he still killed the Demon Master. This was too terrifying. However, everyone accepted the news. Because this impossible thing had happened to Lin Yi, it made people believe in it. Lin Yi symbolized heaven-defying. Chapter 360. In the world of the Great Xia, what the billions of people and experts did not know was that the world was about to undergo a shocking change. This shocking change would change the world of the Great Xia for generations to come. All the guardians of the 8 heavenly cities, they had secretly gathered at the center of the sacred palace. 3,000 guardians. All of them were at the level of the great sage. At this moment, they were all at the center of the sacred palace. Here, there was an altar that was thousands of feet tall. All the guardians were gathered around the altar. Their faces were serious, and their hands were constantly forming mysterious signs. Hum, with the support of the signs, the altar gave off a mysterious light. Mysterious runes flickered incessantly. Endless sacred aura descended from the altar. The 3,000 guardians disappeared one by one, turning into a mysterious light of consciousness and flying toward the altar. With the disappearance of each guardian, the sacred aura of the altar became stronger. Time passed by minute. A full 4 hours passed. All of the guardians had disappeared. At this moment, the altar was like a bright pagoda, flashing with a mysterious light. Boom, the moment when the last guardian disappeared. On the altar, a space-time portal appeared without any warning. Lin Yi, who was at the side, witnessed everything with his own eyes. His god-battling team members were with him. They were different from Lin Yi. Lin Yi knew some of the secrets of the Great Xia. He also knew that the guardians were a wisp of consciousness from the previous ruler of the Great Xia. But the god-battling team members did not know. However, as they watched all of this happen before their very eyes, they were all dumbstruck. Whoosh whoosh, the space-time portal gave off a light and pulled Lin Yi and the others in. They disappeared from the altar, and when they reappeared, they were already in an underground palace. The entire palace was simple and luxurious, but it was not as dark and damp as the underground palace. Lin Yi looked around and realized that Zhou Baiyu and the others were all gone. There was no one beside him. It has been thousands of years. Finally, someone is here. A voice was transmitted into Lin Yi's ears. The voice was transmitted into his mind as if it was right next to his ear. Vicissitudes of life. Not bad, it had a sense of vicissitude. Junior is Lin Yi. When Lin Yi heard this voice, even though he was mentally prepared, he couldn't help but be startled. This was the place where the Grand Xia had ruled for tens of millions of years. Although the ruler of the Grand Xia had long since fallen, it still made him extremely vigilant. Come to the main palace. That voice was incomparably calm. He asked Lin Yi to go to the main hall. Yes. Lin Yi nodded and replied with the attitude of taking things as they came. He walked in the direction of the sound. Soon, he arrived at a spacious palace. There was nothing in the palace. However, on the main seat sat a handsome young man. The young man exuded an unparalleled aura, and between his eyebrows, there was a faint shining mark. However, this young man gave him an extremely unreal feeling. It was like an illusion. Greetings, senior. Lin Yi walked to the center of the main hall and glanced at the young man. Suppressing the shock in his heart, he bowed to the young man. As a divine will sage, he couldn't see through the young man in front of him. Needless to say, this young man was the former ruler of the Grand Xia. When a martial artist's cultivation reached a certain level, they would be able to stay young forever. Some experts looked like young men, but in fact, they had lived for thousands of years. No need to be so polite. I am the ruler of the Grand Xia, and now I am just a remnant consciousness. The moment the altar opened, my remnant consciousness entered the countdown. After 6 hours, my remnant consciousness will completely disappear from this world. With your arrival, I am free. The ruler of the Grand Xia sized up Lin Yi. After a long time, he retracted his gaze, and there was a satisfied look in his eyes. Senior, what do you have to teach me? Lin Yi looked at the ruler of the Grand Xia and asked. He was looking forward to it, because the secrets of the Grand Xia would be revealed in front of him. Of course, the more he knew, the more he had to pay. However, he was clear about one thing, and that was, from the moment he entered the Grand Xia and obtained the first page of the wordless heavenly book, the wheel of fate had already started to turn. All of this was destined to happen. Let me tell you a story. The ruler of the Grand Xia said in a calm tone. He pointed to the chair in front of him and motioned for him to sit down. Thank you, senior. Lin Yi didn't stand on ceremony. He walked to the chair and sat down, listening carefully to the story of the ruler of the Grand Xia. He knew that this story was about the ruler of the Grand Xia and the Grand Xia world, and it was also a secret that he wanted to know. The shocking conspiracy that Biluo mentioned would slowly unfold in front of him. The ruler of the Grand Xia was the key. Millions of years ago, the Grand Xia world was prosperous, and the cultivation civilization had reached an unprecedented peak. The entire Grand Xia world was prosperous, and in the sacred city, there was an emperor with peerless talent. Within 1,000 years, he had already reached the invincible Saint King, broke the shackles, and rushed to the supreme immortal realm. He was the first person in the Grand Xia world to successfully break through to the deity realm. He obtained the Tao deity position and entered the 9 heavens great world. He, who was peerless and unparalleled, met a peerless heaven's proud daughter of heaven. The ruler of the Grand Xia world spoke slowly. At this point, he couldn't help but stop. There was a look of reminiscence in his eyes, as if he had seen everything beautiful in the past. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a faint smile. But it didn't take long. The son of the 9 heavens' divine master, heaven's proud divine king, took a fancy to the heaven's pride. He forced the heaven's pride to drink a sword and commit suicide. Heaven's proud divine king didn't let her die, but imprisoned her, and in the name of colluding with the foreign races, locked the heaven's pride into the God-refining domain, and suffered the pain of God refining. Unintentionally, the heaven's pride found out that heaven's proud divine king was the one who colluded with the foreign races, and wanted to join forces with the foreign races to get rid of the 9 heavens' divine master. This was fate. Heaven's proud divine king knew that the heaven's pride had received this news, and sent the heaven's pride back to the Grand Xia world. He had people bury the Grand Xia world, and at the same time, released countless demons, demon lords, and the Blood Clan into the Grand Xia world, causing the Grand Xia world to fall into an abyss of suffering. From then on, the people of the Grand Xia world were not only in an abyss of suffering, but also unable to break the shackles of attaining the Tao and becoming a god. The ruler of the Grand Xia world said in a calm tone. But there was a painful expression on his face. Lin Yi knew that the story that the ruler of the Grand Xia world was telling was actually his own story. The heaven's pride was the ruler of the Grand Xia world. However, Lin Yi didn't hear the ruler of the Grand Xia world mention the wordless heavenly book. The heaven's pride is you, Senior. Does heaven's proud divine king know of the existence of the wordless heavenly book? Lin Yi looked at the ruler of the Grand Xia world and asked. He doesn't know about the wordless heavenly book. Not to mention him, even the 9 heavens' divine master has never heard of the wordless heavenly book. It is one of the 9 great divine books in the universe, and it is the most mysterious and miraculous existence. The ruler of the Grand Xia world shook his head. The Grand Xia world was buried entirely because the ruler of the Grand Xia world knew the secret of heaven's proud divine king. The ruler of the Grand Xia world was imprisoned in the God-refining domain because heaven's proud divine king took a fancy to the ruler of the Grand Xia world's lover. Senior, you said that the heavenly book is the last lifeline of the Grand Xia world. What does that mean? Lin Yi asked. Chapter 361. It's simple because the heavenly book has always been in the Great Xia world. However, this is a secret of the Great Xia world, and only the master of the Great Xia world knows about it. The master of the Great Xia world finally smiled. The wordless heavenly book was the foundation of the Great Xia world. No one knew that the wordless heavenly book existed in the Great Xia world. However, the wordless heavenly book had always been in the Great Xia world. I see. How did the demonic lord, Blood Emperor, and the demon master know about the wordless heavenly book? Lin Yi suddenly realized. It turned out that the wordless heavenly book had always been in the Great Xia world, and only the master of the Great Xia world knew about it. However, he immediately thought of the demonic lord, Blood Emperor, and the Demon Master. These three guys knew about the wordless heavenly book, and they shouldn't have known about such a magical treasure. I let them know about it on purpose. The Great Xia world is buried and no news about them can be spread out. This is the rule of the Great Xia world, and even I can't change it. Their existence is to train you. Moreover, you only have 1 page of the wordless heavenly book after fusion. The other 8 pages of the real wordless heavenly book are with me. The master of the Great Xia world said calmly. The doubts in Lin Ye's heart were solved bit by bit. At the end, Lin Yi finally understood the reason for the Demon Master and Blood Emperor's existence. It was normal when he thought about it. With the strength of the Great Xia world, even after it was buried, the humans of the Great Xia world were still in charge. Moreover, the real wordless heavenly book was in the hands of the master of the Great Xia world. Even if other people got 9 pages of the wordless heavenly book and fused them, they would only fuse 1 page, which was 1/9 of the real wordless heavenly book. Without the complete wordless heavenly book, even if they got 8 pages, they would be trash and useless. Senior, I'm here. Is it because of talent or something else? Lin Yi looked at the master of the Great Xia world seriously. This was his biggest doubt. Talent is one of them. The main thing is that I saw something on you. This item doesn't belong to this world, not even the 9 heavens world. It came from a very, very distant universe. I was just suspicious at first, but I didn't really care. What I'm really concerned about is the treasure you used to deal with the demonic lord. The master of the Great Xia looked at Lin Yi. His eyes were filled with doubt and anticipation. He knew about the things that Lin Yi had on him from ancient books. He didn't care about them at first, but he didn't expect that he would actually see the things in the ancient books after thousands of years. This thing was actually nothing much. It was mainly because of the owner of this thing. Senior, you're referring to the soul mirror. Could it be that Senior knows this junior's treasure? Lin Yi was shocked. To be able to tell a person's origin from a treasure, this was simply too unreal. Moreover, the soul mirror was given to him by his master, whom he had never met before. In this world, no one would know the origin of this treasure. Who would have thought that the master of the Great Xia dynasty would notice the soul mirror? From ancient books, Silver Star Armor, Silver Star Sacred Sword, and Soul Mirror. The master of the Great Xia looked at Lin Yi. He did recognize the Silver Star Armor and Silver Star Sacred Sword, but these 2 sacred weapons were destroyed and Lin Yi didn't intend to take them. He didn't expect the master of the Great Xia dynasty to know about the Silver Star Armor and Silver Star Sacred Sword. Logically speaking, these 2 sacred weapons were very low level and couldn't catch the master of the Great Xia dynasty's attention. They were left behind by my master. Lin Yi didn't hide anything. Anyway, he had never met his master and couldn't be considered a real master. He was just a disciple in name. Your master is in this world? A look of shock flashed across the master of the Great Xia dynasty's eyes. As powerful as he was, he couldn't remain calm after hearing that Lin Yi was the disciple of that legendary figure. Even though he had already fallen and was just a wisp of remnant soul, he would vanish in 6 hours. No. I haven't seen my master either. He wants me to surpass my senior sisters and senior brothers within an era. By the way, does Senior know my master? Lin Yi revealed a look of anticipation. The master of the Great Xia dynasty was a peerless figure thousands of years ago who had embarked on the path of God. Such a figure might have heard of the master that he had never met. He was curious and expectant about his master and wondered what kind of master he was. Surpass your senior brothers and senior sisters within an era. Haha, to be honest, compared to your master, I'm thousands of miles away. I really can't understand his vision. Putting everything else aside, your senior brother can destroy the entire 9 heavens great worlds with a single finger. Your senior brother is a legend. I've only heard of him in legends. As for your master, the Tao of heaven can't be spoken of. When the master of the great Xia dynasty mentioned Lin Ye's senior brother, his face revealed a look of admiration. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. If Lin Ye's master was in this world, he could reverse time and come back to life. When he heard Lin Yi say that his master wanted him to surpass his senior brothers and senior sisters within an era, the master of the great Xia dynasty was completely dumbfounded. He really couldn't understand what kind of existence the master of a legend was. Lin Yi was a heaven-defying monster. But it was completely impossible for him to surpass his senior brothers and senior sisters within an era. Could it be that he couldn't see that Lin Yi was even more heaven-defying? However, the more it was like this, the greater his hope. He was more relieved that the wordless heavenly book was in Lin Ye's hands. "Senior, you summoned me here. I wonder what guidance you have for me." Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't expect his senior brother to be so terrifying that he could destroy the 9 heavens' great worlds with a single finger. Then, how powerful was his master? After a long silence, he asked the master of the great Xia dynasty. When he first arrived, he asked. However, the master of the great Xia dynasty didn't tell him directly. 3 things. First, fuse with the wordless heavenly book and you will be the master of the great Xia dynasty. Second, save the great Xia dynasty and send the crime of heaven's proud deity king for burying the great Xia dynasty and colluding with foreign races to the 9 heavens court. Third, if one day you can reach 1/10,000th of your master's strength, reverse time and space and revive me once, because you have the power of time and space. The master of the great Xia dynasty said. He stated his purpose. He had waited for tens of thousands of years just to find the next ruler of Grand Xia, to save the world of Grand Xia, to let heaven's proud god king receive the punishment he deserved. However, what he did not expect was that Lin Yi would appear in the world of Grand Xia. Lin Yi had the power of time and space, and he was the junior brother of the legendary figure. Just based on Lin Ye's background and identity, he couldn't find a more suitable person than Lin Yi. If I don't agree, Senior, are you going to kill me? Lin Yi looked at the master of the great Xia dynasty with a smile and said. The wordless heavenly book was a shocking conspiracy. If what the master of the great Xia dynasty said was true, then even the master of the great Xia dynasty didn't know how the wordless heavenly book appeared in the great Xia dynasty. Thinking of Biluo's words, Lin Yi couldn't help but become serious. He was now considering. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.